we get to have some fun. We get to work with Merkaba. Merkaba can be, it's interesting. When you start to work with the Merkaba fields, you can do it in a couple of ways. Some ways I find extremely boring. When you're holding still and you're worrying about all sorts of steps of breathing, there are things called mudras, where you need your finger postures to connect your axiotonal lines in certain ways. And it's like the hard way to do Merkaba and the easy fun way to do Merkaba that actually works better. Alright, the way we do Merkaba is we use full harmonic Merkaba spirals. Now, yesterday we talked about the inverted cones, the two spiraling cones of energy that surround the body. They're actually harmonic Merkabas. You have dimensional Merkabas that are small ones that would be within the body in each dimensional level, and then you have the larger ones that go with the huba body. So on this chart, what we're looking at, the bottom one, the bottom cone, that would correspond to the Nada huba body, which is your dimension 1, 2, 3 level of energy fields. The one on top, the big cone coming down, would correspond to your alpha huba body in dimension 4, 5, 6 energy fields. Now, there's other ones that connect to these. We have a huba body for density 3, dimension 7, 8, 9. That would come down and connect with the one on top. And then you have your avatar one from density 4 that would also merge with these. The process of building a Merkaba vehicle is a process of activating DNA and activating the shields that that allow these currents to come in. So the currents progressively build as you activate those things. Now, when we teach Merkaba, there are certain, just like a lot of the words you see are new, like Kirashe and Kundare, and I explained to you how those words come out of the tonal translations, the audible tonal translations of the actual vibration. The Merkaba has various phases to its building that correspond with each density level. The names of those levels of the Merkaba phases are the same way as the Kirashe and the Kundare. They are the sound tones, the audible sound tones, that translate into the vibration of that energy field. So what we do, instead of worrying about all sorts of posturing of fingers and counting breaths and all this kind of stuff that other Merkaba mechanics teach you, we concentrate on just using the sound tones and the tribal shield. Once we've activated that allows the sound tones to go in deep into the template to create the activations. We simply use the sound tones of the names of each of the Merkaba levels as we're working to build it. Now, we don't always have to even use those, because the Merkaba has a life of its own. Once you start to trigger its activation, your body, the part of your consciousness that is your body, and the part of your consciousness that is the energy that forms the Merkaba, it has an intelligence. It knows when you give it a command to begin activating, if there's nothing in its way, like DNA blockages, it will do that. It responds to command, and it's a part of you. What's interesting is, when you talk about cellular transmutation, because when we talk about Merkaba, that's really the final objective of Merkaba. It gets you to the point where you can disappear here and pop up in other places when your body system is working properly. Where do you go in between? That's like, okay, if I'm going to cellularly transmutate, so I go through a Stargate. If I'm going to turn the light, what does that mean? Where do I go? Where does your consciousness go? Your body disappears by fission and fusion temporary particles. Where do you go? Where does your consciousness go? Is it just like go on vacation and then come back and your body comes back? No, it doesn't do that. It turns itself into the shape. So literally, you turn into these electromagnetic fields when you're going through a gate. The process of Merkaba is a process of turning your whole self, the part of you that's your body right now, which is your physical body, back into the state of counter-rotating fields of light. You go into the avatar state temporarily, liquid light, and then you come back down again when you want to end up in another space-time vector. That's the epitome of what happens once you're able to fully activate a Merkaba vehicle. Now, the way Merkabas are running on the planet and the way the planetary Merkaba is running, that isn't even possible to do, because the planetary Merkaba is running in opposition to the solar spirals that the planet is supposed to connect to, which means it's not getting, on the three-dimensional level, it's not getting any energy coming down from the solar gates, which is supposed to. If the Merkaba field is running correctly, the solar field, the solar system, the sun, has a Merkaba field of its own. It would be what's called base electrical, which means it would be like the top spiral. It would have the 33 1/3 clockwise spin. And then the Earth is supposed to have a Merkaba that's like the bottom one. It's in density 1, and we have the left Merkaba. It's supposed to be magnetic. It's supposed to be 11 2/3 spin. And that would naturally plug into the solar. The electrical and magnetic would plug in together. What's happening now is the Earth's spiral is running as an electrical. This is where the whole, see, electrical is usually associated with the male form, okay? It's, a female would be magnetic, electrical would be male. Right now, with the electrical, the false electrical spin that's happening in the planetary base, it's actually making the particles on the planet collect too much. The planet is getting too magnetic because it's running an electrical Merkaba, which can be a little confusing, but that is what's taking place. It's taking place in our bodies. When we begin to use the proper spin ratios, now that we have the 12 current available running through the grids, we have the ability to reset our Merkabas to the proper spin rate, which progressively will help heal the DNA problems that we're having, the core template problems that we're having. If enough of us do this, it will begin to create critical mass in the planetary grids, and it will counteract what's being done to make sure the reverse Merkaba stays. And what's interesting is indigo children are the most valuable as far as the people up there, if our visitors from up there who like to keep our Merkaba running in reverse, look at the game board down here and look at whose resources to what. Indigos are the biggest threat to their whole campaign. They have most of the planet right now running on a reverse 11. They call it reverse 11 Merkaba spiral. It only takes small collectives of indigos because they can run the higher currents, the Kundurian, the Kiyoshe currents, where the average person can't, and if your Merkaba is spinning in reverse, you can't. If we get our Merkaba spinning the right way, we can override what's being done, and the grids will reset once the critical mass is reached. The Christos imprint would be reset. So that's what we're doing. Now, when we teach Merkaba, it can be fun, because we get up and we spin. Alright? And that's why at some point we're going to be moving the chairs up front, so we can practice this. Now, doing Merkaba spin is kind of interesting. One of the little tricks that you can never really tell in a lot of teachings what you're doing with Merkaba is they don't explain. Alright, you go counterclockwise now and clockwise. Wait a minute, where does clockwise start? Where does my spin start? So we teach you, first of all, where your spin starts, how to know when you're going clockwise and when you're going counterclockwise. Some say, well, go to the left. Okay. And it can be very confusing, particularly when you with a group of people. How am I supposed to be spinning left or right? It's a very simple way. We have you imagine that you're standing on the face of a clock. And you have the 6th position in front of you, the 12 behind you, the 3 over here on the left, and the 9 over here on the right. And if your arms are the clock hands, if you want to go clockwise, you'd be moving that way. If you want to go counterclockwise, you'd be moving that way. It makes it very, very simple. One of the tricks that's used to teach people to do Merkaba the wrong way is to give it a little bit false direction there, where you're actually doing the reverse spin, but you think you're doing the one, you think you're doing clockwise when you're really doing counterclockwise. So by explaining that here's where you start your spins, you'll be able to have very easy control over knowing, what way. It's one way to get across what can be a confusing part of Merkaba mechanics. Merkaba, there's a lot of things you can do with Merkaba once you realize you have one and you have the ability to activate one. We're going to be getting into, this is like the end of Cathara 2. I'm going to put that in right now, finish that up as we go into the rest of the material for roundtables. There's an exercise that, if we use it prior to doing Merkaba, it will be intensified by the fact that we do Merkaba later. Now, when you do Merkaba, or get your Merkaba field starting to activate, what you're doing is consciously making them spin, first of all, the way you want them, second of all, increasing the rate of spin. In the ancient days, the Merkaba exercises were done twice a day by the whole community. And it was really fun. It was like a big party twice a day. Because we had the whole community come out, and in the morning, because we'd always do it with the solar spirals, and then we do it with the lunar spirals. The spirals I'm talking about are energy fields that are constantly circulating down from the sun and from the moon to energize the planetary grids. So what we would do is we would connect our Merkaba to the planetary Merkabas that were working right back in those days, and we would energize our field. If you have a Merkaba and you don't consciously energize it, it'll stay at a certain rate. It'll start to slow its spin, which means it's not bringing energy in as fast. If you want to keep your energy up and keep it sustained, and in those days it was sustained to the point where we were breatharians, we didn't have to get energy any other way. We would simply, in the mornings, with the sunrise, do a clockwise spin, the male Merkaba, and that would energize we would connect our Merkaba fields to the solar Merkaba fields and stimulate them. And we would use the tones to build the frequency and to draw more frequency in. And then in the evenings, we charge the bottom one, the solar spiral, the lunar spirals. Because at night, the difference between day and night, why we get light and dark, has to do with the outer things that our scientists tell us about the rotation of the Earth around the sun, etc. But there are different frequencies available on the planet during day and night. The dominant frequency in the daytime is the electrical frequency, which is an antiparticle frequency that's actually coming in from parallel Earth. At nighttime, it's the reverse. You have more energy kicking out from the planetary grid. It's magnetic energy. And the lunar cycles are pulling down. So like the orbit between here and the moon is actually pulling the magnetic Merkaba fields up at night. So if you want to intensify work with Merkaba, you do it in harmony with the planetary grids. Now we're working with planetary grids that are not in harmony with themselves. However, if we're doing the right Merkaba spin, and this is the only reason it would work to be able to reset it, the problems with the Earth's grids are only with the Nether Merkaba. That means there's portions, even of the Nether Merkaba, that are still spinning the right way, even though the majority is spinning the wrong way. If we plug in our fields, our Merkaba fields, into the planetary Merkaba field and start to set the right spin, we will pick up a few currents that are still running the right way in the planetary grids, and we will be able to link them the right way into the portions of the solar fields that are running the right way. And this is how we can literally, as an electrical force, electromagnetic force on the planet, we can actually shift what the planetary shields are doing and get them back to the right order. And at the same time, we can get our own bodies back to the right order. The Merkaba is extremely important when we get into DNA. I don't have the charts for this because there's like literally no information, part of which was given on the plane over here. We got heavily into the DNA analysis of where the DNA templates fit in with like the manufacture of the chemical DNA and those kinds of things. Now, when we get into the DNA templates, I talked about yesterday how each strand has 12 file letters, or keylines. Those keylines look like little triangles. This is why it was going to have a diagram eventually. If you could picture what looks like an infinity sign, you know, that kind of horizontal figure 8, and you use that in your mind as an image for one strand, okay? That's one double helix strand. On that strand, you would have, and just look at one side of it for now. One side goes with particle Earth, one side goes with the other particle Earth. Let's look at our side. We would have, on our particle body side, we would have 6 of those 5 letters, or 6 of those keylines. We would have half of each. One in the magnetic strand, one in the electrical. So you can use the image of picturing a keyline as a 6-pointed Star of David, and then pull it apart, where you have one triangle for each one, for each fire letter on the top of that figure 8, and you have one matching one on the bottom. Now, when you're not activating DNA to go through gates or to transmute, those little triangles stay apart. When your body's working properly in the template, those little triangles come together to form the shape of a Star of David, which means they create mini Merkabas or micro Merkabas. The process of getting DNA to transmute, where the templates send up the instructions that allow certain things to be manufactured in the chemical DNA, happens because the keylines that are usually broken apart in polarization come together and form micro Merkabas that allow the fusion of the double helix strand into one, and then there's codes in between each strand that allow those strands to fuse with the next. When strands fuse, the particles and antiparticles in the body fuse, which means, interestingly, when you go through atomic transmutation, normally you have electrons around the nucleus, and you have protons in the nucleus of atoms. They switch places. They actually switch polarity and turn into each other temporarily, which allows them to change the axis of their rotation. They change angular rotation of particle spin to match and mimic their double, their antiparticle. So what you have is a bonding where the particles here bond with their antiparticles and create internal fusion. Now, if you were just going to create internal fusion without the natural sequencing that is involved in each fire letter firing on time, one goes, the next one goes, the next one goes. If they fire randomly, you blow up. If you have atomic fusion taking place in a way that's out of sequence, it would literally put your body into spontaneous combustion. And And there have been cases where, for whatever reason, and there's usually reasons, that people have spontaneously combusted, and they found the remaining, they had no idea why, because it only seems like the body itself went. There was no fire around it. There was no source of ignition. And there are cases documented with spontaneous combustion. It's like one of those mysteries of science. Why might that happen? It's because the DNA wasn't functioning right, or something affected the DNA to make it not function right, where it attempted to create cellular fusion, but it was done out of sequence. A lot of the cases of spontaneous combustion have to do with actual attempts of abduction, where visitors have attempted to interact with people and to teleport them and missed. They put the wrong calculations of frequency in when they tried to. The process of abduction, you're going to have an ET or a fallen angelic come and try to snatch you, which they do on occasion. They won't bother indigos usually because we can fight back frequency-wise. But what they will do is they will first transmit a frequency. It's a sonic frequency. They use photosonic frequency, which means there are certain types of technologies that allow photons to carry sound patterns. So photosonic energy is built on that, and it's one of the most powerful energies in the universe. What they try to do is first send the photosonic beam in. It will affect your body that gives what's called a bioneurological block, which means it stops your motor abilities. You're still awake in the brain, but you can't move. That's how they tend to get people. All right, if that's done wrong, if the wrong calibration of frequency is sent in, it will make fission and fusion happen within the cellular core. And if it's not done naturally, which these are not natural technologies, they're not organic, it will create explosion of the body internally. So these kind of things can happen when we're doing Merkaba, when we're working with DNA to do cellular transmutation as the ultimate objective. Right now it's just to get healed, all right? We're not going to be able to, in 3 weeks of practicing this, go, disappear and change our energy rotation particle spin. It takes longer than that to get the body back to where it can do what it normally do. We're not going to blow up, though, when we do this, because we're progressively, first of all, repairing any damaged chemoms. That's what the thought of healing is about. When we use the Maharic shield to reset the divine blueprint, the D12 imprint in our cells, what we're doing is restoring any damaged or broken or reversed chelons in each DNA strand. Because if you don't do that, and you start to open the Kundalini energies to let these energies flow, it's going to create random chaotic shift in angular rotation of particle spin, and it will create, it could explode. So we're not doing that. We're getting the templates repaired first, and then activating them in a sequence. These are the secrets that, it's really bizarre, because the secrets that belong to everybody once upon a time. But when certain groups here, and certain human groups began to help certain fallen angelic groups, they wanted to have this knowledge all to themselves. And then the knowledge got fragmented all over. So it was a big thing to find out the key codes, which were the tribal shield names that would allow the whole templates to be activated. Everybody's trying to figure out what the sequences were because they lost how to activate them. They lost the sequences because they lost the tribal shield names. They had the tribal shield names, and then they would be changed. So you'd have documents that had the real ones. They'd be hidden in very secret places. Then you'd have falsified ones put out to change things. This happened over and over and over since Atlantean times. Which, and I talk about Atlantean times, we'll get into that more this afternoon. There's a whole long period that's Atlantean time. Yeah.
Are you saying that it's not advisable to run your Merkabas unless you do the catharic healing first?
Yes. You need to do them together. But the way we teach Merkaba is to run the Merkaba the right way requires that you activate the Maharaj current. So you are doing the healing as you're running your Merkaba. The other Merkaba techniques that are out there do not teach you to activate your Maharic shield. And this is why it gets me, when I saw what was being done, when I finally realized it was pointed out to me, because I wasn't sure. I said, I always felt funny about certain techniques that are out there, but I couldn't justify why, so I never, harmed, whatever. When it was shown to me what was being done here, and I was not shown any of this until after the Treaty of Altar was broken in September of 2000. I did not know any of this, because this was information that was not, the Guardian groups were not going to do the whole expose and spill all and start pointing fingers at the Anunnaki groups. If they were going to behave themselves and be nice for a change and work cooperatively and not hurt people, they were going to start teaching the proper Merkaba spin. They were supposed to start undoing the damage they'd done by teaching their teachers, okay, now we do this. And they were supposed to go in where they saved them some embarrassment, to the point teachers, because it's usually not the teacher's fault. The teacher usually is just following the channel that's telling them what to do. And we were supposed to go into that, into where they were going to start teaching this. We were all supposed to start teaching this together. Well, it didn't work out that way. I just found out in September of 2000 what was being done. And the more I learned about it, I found something called healthy anger. A long time ago, people said, don't you ever get angry? Don't you anything like healthy anger? I thought about that. Healthy anger. I'd always been a person that, I just didn't get angry. If anything upset me, I would get hurt and then, kind of heal that and move beyond. But I didn't get angry at anybody. When I saw what was being done here, I found, for the first time, I really experienced what healthy anger was about. How dare they? How dare anybody come in here and do this to a race? What is being done by not only teaching Merkaba reverse is bad enough that they're using us to try to reverse the planetary shields so that you get the whole planet completely and permanently running in reverse like Nibiru is. They're doing it in a way that is going to kill us faster. It's bad enough that our DNA is shut down as it is, not working, but you put a person with blocked DNA doing Merkaba without running them a higher current, and you're just using them until they burn out because you're having more and more chaotic frequency pulled in. That's what really aggravated me. They're not only using people, they're using them with a knowing that this is causing harm, direct harm, that this is going to make them sicker. And it is if people do this. Now, we don't have to buy this, is what it comes down to. That's why I'm willing to I feel like a David and Goliath here. I'm like this little tiny David up here looking at this New Age movement with all those very important teachers that are pushing Merkaba mechanics that are teaching you to hurt yourself. They're not going to be happy with me when they start hitting the internet. They're going to be very upset with me. You're going to see a hate campaign launched against me. I know it. But it's okay, because that's the way they're reacting to these things, yes?
On the diagram, the heart castle, with the heart shield portion and the Rishiak shield portion, what's the coding there?
Okay, these codings you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, it says E-EM-CW-CCW. That means these are like both, but they'll have a dominant. Okay, so that means dominant electromagnetic, with dominant clockwise and a counterclockwise spin. Okay, so they spin both ways, but the one first, it has like an E and then an EM. That means it's electromagnetic. It does both, but its dominant one is the EM, that one. The other one is the dominant M. Okay, dominant magnetic.
How do you explain the two counterclockwise and the Rishiak? How do you explain the two counterclockwise and the Rishiak?
Oops, there's another that's supposed to be there. I just noticed this is a whiteout thing. This was supposed to be a whited out one. This is pasted up. This is counterclockwise here, and this is clockwise. Actually, this doesn't give you two counterclockwise. It just gives you a repeat on the clockwise, which is the same thing. That right there should be whited. You can cross this out too. This isn't really the story one says. It's just kind of saying, okay, what's clockwise? Clockwise. It's clockwise. But you can, the one that looks like it's handwritten in there, these were all handwritten at one point, and then we pasted up over them, and this was missed with the whiteout. Yeah, I apologize for those. I'm glad people are catching them, because it's going to take me a year to go through the whole manuscript on these to find those things. See, when they're published through Granite Publishing, it's a lot easier because they have their proofreading department, But these we're putting out by ourselves because there's no time, to get them in the format for Granite. Okay. Anyway, back to what I was saying. What I was saying was we're talking about what is being done out there with the New Age movement. I'll warn anybody that follows the work that we're trying to teach you. Expect, and this is not negative programming like some people have pointed out that I tend to, it's been called negative embedding. Someone pointed out to me that, I phrase things in a way that I'm negatively embedding things. Like when I'm telling you about this will create pole shift unless, it seems to be people are missing the unless, which is telling you what to do about it and fixing it. But I should be saying, in the past it was like this. Excuse me, it's in the present. Anyway, what I want to say is I'm not negatively embedding the thought, in my mind or yours, that there is going to be a campaign launched to make me go away. I know this. It's part of the game and it has been always. It's not just in the past, it's in the present, and it will be in the future, but it's the nature of the game. If I delude myself, or you, into thinking everybody's going to be so happy that this information is being released and they're going to be so nice to me, boy, am I giving myself a con job. Alright? The reality is, there will be a counter-campaign. We're in a polarized universe. Every time this information was brought into this planet, there was always a counter-campaign, and there probably will be for many eons to come, until the point where the whole drama is healed, where we have no fallen angelics in this time matrix. Somewhere that does exist, and we are in the path to getting to that place. But at this moment in time, that would not be a reality if I were to say, this is going to be smooth. I want you to know that when this information, we've just started releasing this information. They don't know how much we're releasing yet. When they find out that we're just telling it like it is. And I know this is true. You don't have to believe me. You know, that's one thing I say. You can believe anybody you want. If you'd rather spin your record the other way, all power to you. But somebody needs to bring the attention to people of what's going on out there. Because right now, they're trusting people that are good people. The teachers are good people. But the teachers don't know who they're talking to part of the time. People that are listening to Thoth. Who is Thoth? He's the Atlantean Egyptian. Great. That tells me a lot. He's the nibiruian Atlantean Egyptian. Yes, that tells you a little bit more. But who are Nibiruans? They're Anunnaki. Oh, that's okay. They're our brothers from the sky. You're right. This is where the history comes in. If you knew who these people were, you'd be really... The first thing if they said, here, let me teach you Merkaba. What you say is, excuse me, where's your resume? Who are you? Where do you come from? But people haven't been asking that because they've been getting caught in the glory. Oh, wow, Thoth, the ancient god, is talking to me. Who made him a god? He did. All right? You know, that's like, there's so much that people need to be aware of out there. And I have nothing against the people who got caught in this. I feel bad for them. And I'm not a liar. I have no reason to teach you, to teach your Merkaba, to do your Merkaba another way. That's going to hurt you. But I found out. And I have begun to use the practices of putting it back the right way. And it clears some stuff. At first makes you feel a little strange. But then there's a peace that comes. My body knew. When I started to do it that way, my body always knew, in fact. It was really strange because I could always feel that there was this clockwise field coming down around me. It was clockwise. Now, if it was going the way the other teachers were saying, it should be going the other way. But it didn't feel like it was supposed to go the other way. That's because the Rishi level was holding my top Merkaba the way it was supposed to be, so I could get the data that I was bringing in from the acadic level, because I wouldn't be able to access any of that data if I had my top Merkaba going in reverse, because that comes down, electrically transmits down into my Merkaba. That's how I can, get information up in place. That's when I started to realize, something's different, maybe I'm just weird. And they said, no, there's more to this. But that was before they could release the information, because it was broken, the Treaty of Altair. Part of the Treaty of Altair that was made on July 5th of 2000 was the Anunnaki agreed to come back in. Again, they'd already broken 2 treaties. They agreed to come back in and not initiate pole shift. They agreed to hand over Stargate 4, the part that they control, and they agreed to set these grids back with us to the right order. But one part of what our agreement was, we would not immediately release all of the history of what they have done here. We would give them a chance to integrate in to this society, because that was their idea. They were going to integrate in. They would be given a chance on a very short leash because of the history. And in small increments, as humans were taught to be a little more forgiving and to understand the sickness that could cause something like that. So we'd have a little bit more compassion rather than freak out and want to really go after them. Because some people will react that way. If I look at this way, gosh, if this could make me angry when I found out, I'm really hard to get me angry. I'm passionate. I'm a very passionate person that can passionately debate a point. But I do it out of a jovial heart. There's still can be intense when I get that kind of thing. But it's not an anger. There's no sense of violation. It's okay, we're down here at the Earth realm and we're having a difference of opinion. And this is okay. There is actually I know you guys are sick and you have some problems. Big problems that would cause you to do this. But what a horrible thing to do to a species. Somebody has got to stop this. And the founders feel that way. They've had enough. There's been enough chances that were given for the Anunnaki races to work cooperatively here. They've been given chances to go away and have other places that they could call their own, but they didn't need to take this place. None of it was good enough. So this time the founders intervened. And part of that intervention is sending the speakers in. Once they broke that treaty, the final treaty, that was it. It's too close to time. If these stargates aren't repaired, these grids aren't repaired, it's going to go in pole shift. And the Anunnaki know that. So this is why it's not going to go in pole shift, because we're going to change it, which we will do. If we realize there's a problem, if we put the problem in the past, we don't have to do anything now, do we? This is what some of them are trying to teach us to do. Oh, well, now it's okay. We fixed it. We can teach ourselves in our mind that right now, it's okay because the problem is the past, and right now we can make great efforts to fix it. If I told you that, I would be lying. There's been hardly any efforts to fix it on our part, because human beings on this planet have been following the teachers who have been following the ones that are holding the reversal in place. We can change it if we know about it. That's why I'm bringing this material to you. And it's a challenging path, because you're not going to find a lot of people right now until they start to understand. They're going to be very protective of their teachers' teachings. And I respect that. So if you see things coming out after you're exposed to this is new information. Hawaii was the first place we really were even given the depth of the information on the Merkaba reversal on the planetary level and it's doing to us. When this starts to circulate, you're going to be confronted with a choice. Oh, geez, do I believe the things they're saying about a shaman? Or do I believe a shaman? Right? Because I've already seen slam campaigns come at me. They dig stuff out that has nothing to do with me. They invent stuff. And then they put it out on the internet. I know this person personally. You do? I met you once at a workshop. You know what I mean? Right? So if you see things that come out, realize what I'm trying to share with you. I'm not, personally, I don't have a vested interest in what you choose to do, except for the fact that I care. I care enough to play David to Goliath out there. And I would like to see everybody on this planet set free and healed, and I'd like to see the planet healed. But I'm not the kind of person that forces my will on anybody, or is going to try to blackmail you or scare you into following what we're teaching as opposed to what other people are teaching. So go follow, see what they're teaching, and see what you think. If you want to spin your Merkaba that way, see how it feels. Except, when you do it without a Mahara seal, you can hurt yourself, or add to hurting yourself. And that's not a negative statement, it's a statement of fact. Because if you run your electricals certain ways in your body, it's either going to help your body or it's going to do something not helpful to your body. And basically, when you're running the spins the other way, you are draining the life force out of your body. I'll tell you why it's being done. There's a plan behind it. It wasn't done just to say we don't like that race, so we're going to make the Merkabas go reverse. No, not that at all. The human race and the bodies on the planet were simply perceived as tools. The planetary grids have their own natural Merkaba spin, you're supposed to. With the planetary grid spin, it is known in stellar activation cycles, Stargate cycles, only humans hold the DNA coding that can make that Cathara grid full length to Earth's Templar to direct the energy of the Stargates. Anunnaki bodies can't do this, and Draconian bodies can't do this. If they were going to reverse the spin completely on the planetary shields, where it wouldn't right itself during a stellar activation cycle, they had to get the bodies of the humans on the planet holding the reversal. So they did these things. See, they have a reversal on the planetary level, only on the Nephilim level of the planetary Merkaba. Their objective is to get the whole thing, Earth, Tara, Gaia, all the way up to D11, running in reverse, which will break its connection to Stargate 12, have it run on a reverse matrix where they can plug it into their planet that they call Avalon in Lyra, which is an Anunnaki-controlled planet, an Angelican-controlled planet. This isn't a small agenda. Right? This isn't just, oh, we like that planet, we're going to take it. This planet has a set of stargates that are natural, like any other planet, but it has something very, very special that other planets don't. In fact, there are only 2 systems like this in the entire 50-dimensional time matrix. It's called a crystal pylon temple network. A crystal pylon temple network is a created technology that uses the photosonic and photoradionic energies that are natural to stargates, those life force currents that are coming down. It utilizes them through natural crystalline structures put in very specific ways. Now, this was created millions and millions of years ago. There was a point in time that in the Voyager's 2 book we talk about, the Secrets of the Mente book, we talk about the fall from Tara. When this planet was fully in density 2, it had fully evolved this part of it out of density 1. It was fully in density 2. And there was a major takeover attempt that happened there with a group called the Templar Solar Initiates, who were humans that decided to follow a bad agenda, who hooked up with the Anunnaki who tried to take over. And they almost blew the planet to smithereens. But they saved part of it, and Terra is still there. Part of Terra ended up fragmenting and falling, literally, in vibration, back into density 1. It was organized in a way that it could re-evolve. Its template was put back. Our solar system, which is called the Sol solar system, SOL, is actually part of the Palladian solar system. We're like the 8th star. Our sun is the 8th star in the Palladian spiral. Now, when these things were being done, in order to allow this repair job on Terra's grids, by allowing these pieces of it to re-evolve, there had to be a system of anchors of frequency that would hold it in place, almost like when a bone breaks. You put a splint on it to give it temporary support. Well, when you're talking planets, temporary becomes millions and millions of years sometimes, especially when there's interference and somebody keeps trying to break the bone again. The crystal pylon temples are placed, they used to be, on surface Earth. There was a set placed on parallel Earth, on surface Earth, and on inner Earth, the 3 interconnected planetary units. They were placed on 12 points. Well, originally they were placed on 12 points on each of the planets. Right now, the only system left are the crystal pylon temples of inner Earth. They connect to inner Earth's 12 stargates, and they run the frequency of Earth's stargates. These are the halls of the Mente. What they are is crystal pylon temple networks. They keep open inner Earth stargates to allow continual flow of frequency, of life force energy, to keep sustaining this planet until its grids can pull its own frequency, so it gets back into its natural orbital pattern. The crystal pylon temples are a good technology. They're a technology that's been created for good and used for good. However, if someone gets control of that technology that has an intention that is not good, they could literally, if they wanted to, destroy this whole time matrix instantly. Because it's running current, open current, from density 5 all the way down, holding that frequency field. If that gets turned against the racism's time matrix, it's not just Earth that's going to be in trouble. This is why Earth has been a battleground. Because Earth, Terra, and Gaia have matching systems of these crystal pylon temples. There's one other system in Orion that we're not particularly involved with, and that system has been corrupted to the point where it has been shut down. So right now, Earth is the only place in this entire 15-dimensional time matrix that is the proud owner of a set of crystal pylon temples, which makes it a prime target for anything that wants to take over this time matrix. For literally millions of years, the Anunnaki have been trying to get control of this time matrix, and so have the Draconians. They're not going to succeed. They think they're going to succeed, but they know if they're ever going to succeed, there's only one way they're going to do it, and that's get a hold of those crystal pylon temples. Now, if they were such a threat, just happening, you think the Guardians might get rid of them, but they can't, because they're not only holding the alignment of Earth, Terra, and Gaia, they're holding the other alignments of the Merkaba spirals, of the things that are connected to those. If they were taken out at this point, there would be cataclysmic novas happening in various different star systems, and lots of the life field would be fragmented. So it's not an option to shut them down or to take them out. That would be a last resort, like what happened in Orion, and it was a mess. And I was like, literally, they were put in before ours were. And it was a mess. It almost blew up the time matrix when they were shut down. So it's not an option to, well, if it's such a danger, let's turn it off so nobody gets to use it. They can't do that. This is why the interest has been here for so long. And this afternoon we're going to go through some of the history, and I'll show you what just the recent interest has been since about 798,000 BC. You would be amazed when you start to find out the forbidden history. I was amazed. I remember reading parts of this, but I didn't know where it fit. You know, historians tell us this. I remember reading there, and it seemed to be about this time, but that's not what was going on. You know? I remember because I had a lot of my incarnational memory open from the time I came in. You know, from the time I was an infant, before I could speak, I was seeing pictures and knowing that I was there. You know? When I started to be able to see where my memories fit, when the history was revealed, this has been literally a battleground. Why don't we have evidence of that? Why aren't there old starship wrecks, laying around that the archaeologists can find? Because there are 3 distinct periods of planetary cleansing, which means you come in with photosonic weapons and you vaporize what you don't want anybody to find. And if you're trying to take over peoples, you don't want to wipe them out. You need their DNA to access to planetary shields. So what you have to do is trick them. First, you have to make them forget who they are, so they're very easy to manipulate. Then you need to make sure you control their history. That's what's been happening here. And it's not a lie, and it's not a fabrication. But what's really sad is when you start to realize the scope of what's happening. The reason they're reversing the Merkabahs is simply because in our DNA templates, we have that connection to our tribal shield. But we also have, even without the tribal shield, we have our Maharat shields. Through those shields, we are holding literally the same scalar patterns that go with Earth's 12 primary stargates. If they can get control and reverse the stargates of Earth and parallel Earth, what it will do in a stellar activation cycle. Because in stellar activation cycles, parallel Earth's time cycle and ours blend together with inner Earth in the middle, which usually will cause the opening of the inner Earth portals and transit between the three spaces. If both parallel Earth and Earth's shields are reversed on a three-dimensional level during a stellar activation cycle, when that blend happens, it will reverse inner Earth, which means it will reverse the coding that's running through the crystal pylon temples, and it will give the Anunnaki and the Anu-Elohim matrix control over the crystal pylon temple network. They will have control over the Mos Mermente. They have been trying this for thousands and thousands of years, very aggressively. Very aggressively. We're just stuck in another round with it. But we're not stuck. Because this time, and the reason it has gone on so long, is we've been trying to work, our races have been trying to work with their hands tied behind their back since 208,216 BC. That is when certain events happened. It was a stellar activation cycle, the last one that actually consummated on this planet. And we were invaded by the Nephilim race, which was one of the Draconian races. And they set us up. They had infiltrated, and they were in a human type form, but they were very distinct from us. You could tell that they were different than humans. But they had entered the Emerald Covenant, and they were going to work with us. About a couple hundred years before, they had planned that they would infiltrate by being our buddies. And being angelic humans that we were, everybody was very glad to have them. Oh great, the healing, that Christ consciousness, we love everybody thing, which is very good to have, but you need some discretion with it too. They were intermarriages eventually that were allowed. And there were rules you had to abide by, because you could actually contaminate the codes of an angelic human under certain circumstances. One simple rule: if you're going to be interacting with one of these beings, you're on an Emerald Covenant, they're doing a redemption contract, which means you're getting your DNA back, but they don't have it fully back yet. Simply run your mouth about it. Okay? Just run your D12 frequency, and you'll actually help them. Well, that protocol started to get broken as the couple hundred years turned into 50 years before the stellar activation cycle was due. What had happened was it was a sexual invasion, literally. They stole our hearts and got, they're husband and wife couples. They were not breeding children, because that would create a genetically distorted, race of beings, and both sides had agreed not to do that. Plus, they were a hybrid form that at that time was not able to interbreed directly with humans. But what they were able to do was convince their partners to not run the Maharata frequency during their intimate exchanges. And because there was a little bit too much naivety on the part of the angelic humans at the time, they figured, well, okay, they said it bothered them. There was a little bit too much frequency in the field for them to be too close. So, you run your salutations, or you run your Merkaba in the morning and at night, you'll be okay. The founder said, always run your Maharata frequency when you're engaging with anyone. You would do that when you're engaging with each other. Why should you make an exception here? You shouldn't make an exception here. But too many of them did. They started to believe the lies and the twists on technology, where they said, it doesn't work that way. You don't have to worry. The founders are just being overprotective. By the time it was time for the stellar activation cycle to happen, and the DNA templates of the angelic humans triggered into activation, it was not known until it started to run into the grids. The DNA code started to unload into the grids that they were running in reverse. They were running in a reverse 10 code. And what that did was start to reverse the shields. And it also blocked on a very important moment, a moment called grounding the stellar bridge, which is the moment in time when the Merkaba fields from the stellar spirals that are coming down lock into Earth's core. They're supposed to lock in on 12 dimensions of frequency. They locked in on 10. That means all the gates open on a 10 code, not a 12 code. That meant draconians and Anunnaki could easily come through the gates. It wouldn't affect their biology. Before, the planet was protected to some degree because they had to have help getting through the gates because they carried a deep 12 frequency seal, which was a protection seal, the natural Christos seal. After 216 BC, we have been working on the 10 code pulse grid to get the grids back under the natural spin required a D12 frequency, and the grids couldn't hold a D12 frequency anymore. But humans could, if they could pull it directly from the solar spirals. So what our job was back then was to learn how to pull the D12 through, transduce it into our body, and put it back into the grids. So we get the grids activating on the 12 code during the next stellar activation cycle. That was 200,000 years ago. Why is it that we're having our next stellar activation cycle now? You'd think we would have had a few by then. Because technically speaking, they can happen once every 26,556 years. We haven't had one in over 200,000. Because every time you can make time to have one, there was attack. Every time, either the Anunnaki or the Drax or both came in, and every time they had to be stopped. Or the place would completely, and sometimes it did, go into pole shift. There was one in 75,000 BC, right around that time frame, that created pole shift that created part of the glacial period. There was another one in 22,326 BC. That was the last one that began to consummate, and our guys had to stop it because they were coming in to finish what they had started in 25,500 BC, which was they were going to finish the reversal on the grids. We have simply been used because we are keepers. The human race was appointed as the guardians of this planet, so it carries in its DNA the security codes for the stargates. And the Magi race lines carry the security codes for Earth stargates and the galactic gates and the universal gates. They carry the staff all the way up. That's what indigo children do. They're the gatekeepers. What we're facing right now, this New Age movement of light and love, and we're moving into enlightenment, the guardians didn't start this. I just want you to know that. And that's a big surprise. They go, oh, it was supposed to be light, everybody happy, we're all yeah, right? This was part of something called the Luciferian Covenant. It was a covenant that was signed and mandated in 9060 BC. It was a collective of Anunnaki races who had been part of the hybridization program that was supposed to help their races. Well, they mutinied from the Animal Covenant progressively over a stage of years before that. And they formed an agreement that they knew they had enough people on the planet now that they could get away with taking over. This time, the next stellar activation cycle, was when they could get in. And they did things in a very sneaky way. There were a couple of things done. The first thing was called the Luciferian Rebellion in 25,500 BC. That was actually an intergalactic event where certain draconian affiliated Anunnaki forces took over planet Nibiru. They took over Nibiru. They took over part of Sirius B. They took over part of Sirius A and a couple of other places. And, of course, the target was Earth with its halls of Mente stargates. What they did first to try to get a hold of the stargates was get Earth's Merkaba running in reverse. And later this afternoon, I'll show you how they did that. It has to do with a planet and a battle star, which is a piece of a planet that was turned into a vehicle that could generate massive amounts of electromagnetic force, and it could be used to transmit, and it could be used to generate magnetic fields. In the Bible, it was referred to as wormwood. That's that thing that's supposed to crash down on Earth. It might still. Wormwood. It's a wormwood. It was called wormwood in the Bible. In Revelations, there is talk about it after the seventh seal opened, or whatever seal it is that opens. Then wormwood comes, and the waters turn, a third of the waters turn to wormwood, and a third of this is like, everybody's been trying to figure out for 2,000 years, what is wormwood? Wormwood, the word, is kind of funny, because it isn't wormwood, really. What happened was it was an Anunnaki word that was referring to the planet Malbec. Malbec was a planet that did exist before Seeding 3, the angelic humans, before 98,000 BC. There was a planet that existed in where the asteroid belt is right now. There were major wars that took place, and that planet was blown apart, leaving part of the asteroid belt. But there was another large fragment of it. In fact, there were two large fragments of it. The one largest fragment was taken and harnessed electromagnetically, and it was plugged into the electromagnetic orbit of planet Nibiru. And when Nibiru would cycle in to our galaxy, it would cycle out and vice versa. It was used as a monitoring station at first to monitor the Earth territories. Well, when Nibiru got taken over, that monitoring satellite became used to link our Merkaba field directly to Nibiru instead of to the solar fields. It was used to distort the frequencies, the Merkaba link between the solar fields and Earth's Merkaba, to bend Earth's Merkaba, portions of it, the first three-dimensional level of the method, into plugging it into Nibiru. Our planet literally got hijacked. It's been running part of the Nibiru grid ever since. There's technologies here, that's why we're in Ireland, and that's why we're going to be in England, that are holding this and anchoring it into the planetary grids. But when that Merkaba reversal happened, that was just the beginning of a really bad mess. First of all, it created major pole shift at the time. Right around, somewhere around 20,000 BC, they know there was another glacial period. It had hell. All these glacial periods, the science has evidence that they had taken place. These were not natural. They occurred most of the time in coincidence with either right before or right after stellar activation cycles or attempted stellar activation cycles when they could have happened. Because that's when stuff came in and everybody was messing with the grids. Now, when the 25,500 BC thing took place, the guardian races, and this is part of the history of the indigo children, it was decided in 25,500 BC, everybody knew that there was going to be another potential stellar activation cycle in 22,326 BC. So a few thousand years, but they knew it was moving toward that. If that reversal was still in place when that stellar activation cycle happened, they also had the reversal on parallel Earth. It was done two-way, where they got parallel and they got ours. They were just waiting for that stellar activation cycle. Because when those time fields started to blend, it would roll over and flip, it would reverse in Earth, and it would reverse the coding on the whole planet. They were just sitting around waiting, figuring they would get it. Well, the Guardians weren't going to just sit still and let them do that. So there was a very special team appointed. There was a team of ascended masters that decided they would come down through the human imprint, and they would create a species on the planet that would be able to hold enough frequency that they could block that and change it and restore the natural crystallist pattern. Because the humans on the planet at that point had become interblended with the Anunnaki to such a degree through the hybridization program that they weren't supposed to get interblended like that. That the human gene code was becoming contaminated, and it could not run any of the Kundalini Piaget anymore. So there was a new race created. A new race was part of the old race, but it was a new group of incoming souls that came in from the time fields, beyond the time fields, from the sound fields. The group was called the Eoni. The word for the Eoni now is indigo children. They were a specialized group of ascended masters that came in with the purpose of regenerating a race line here, a Magi Grail line, that would be able to hold the frequencies that would counteract the mess. So when that stellar activation cycle happened, we would be able to clear the integrity of the planetary grids. At this point in time, the personality known as Thoth and the collective that personality represents. Thoth was a being that was appointed as one of the guardians of a segment of the Anunnaki biogenesis program. He was an Anunnaki that entered the Emerald Covenant many thousand years ago. And from 155,000 BC forward, he was working to assist his group of Anunnaki to work through the biogenesis program. He was trusted, he was loved. He was a being who had reached 11.5 strand activation for an Anunnaki. That was a very impressive feat. Everybody loved him and trusted him. He was so trusted that when it was getting near time for the stellar activation cycle to come, the Eoni had entrusted him, and founders had entrusted him, to be a speaker and to have access to one of the CDD plates, so he could bring the knowledge to some of the Atlantean priest castes that were part of the biogenesis program that were still nice guys. Because most of the Atlantean priest castes at that point had been totally corrupted, and they were following the Nibiru agenda. There was an agreement made that because it was so dangerous to have this information on planet in written form, the Thoth was simply supposed to speak it to those who he knew were loyal to the Emerald Covenant. Well, because because Toth got some pressure from his Anunnaki friends on Nibiru, and he realized that this was a chance for their race to be supreme. And because Toth, there's one little part of his Anunnaki-ness he never did heal, and that was called ego. It was called arrogance, and it was called race supremacist attitude. It was finally a chance for that repressed feeling that we're better than them anyway. Why should they be the guardians of the temple? Toth took the CBD plate. He translated it in writing. Those writings were called the Emerald Tablets. They were given to the corrupt Atlantean priest caste so they would have the mechanics to make sure the reversal stayed. And then they attacked. Toth had been given access, free access, to come in to the hidden Yanni settlements. Because he was trusted, he was allowed to come in, and he brought some people with him. He brought an invasion with him, and the Yanni were decimated. Some of them survived and ended up going into exile into a place called Lohas Atlantis. Lohas Atlantis is what is now called England and Ireland. This is part of Atlantis. Another part of it is down in Miami, Florida. And there was a bunch of it in the middle once upon a time. All that's left of that is Bermuda. The betrayal of Toth sent ripples of agony through his whole crime matrix. And it started a campaign among the Anunnaki, where they knew they had an edge here now. But fortunately, the Yanni rail lines weren't totally destroyed. There were still enough of them. They were scattered among the other tribes, the other human tribes, because they were pursued. Because they were the only threat to stop Toth and the other Anunnaki. If it had been successful in 22,326 BC, we wouldn't be sitting here worrying about it today. If they had been successful, because stellar activation was beginning to take place, but what hadn't happened yet was the grounding of the stellar bridge, which is the frequency spiral coming down through the densities, through the sun, did not yet latch onto Earth's core. And the guardian races from Sirius B blocked it from doing so. Because if they didn't, the reversal would have happened then, a complete reversal. They would have got control of the house and didn't. So the whole darn battle got hung up in a stalemate until the next stellar activation cycle, which everyone knew the next potential one would not be until the year 2000 to 2017. So, changing the time. Parallel inner-earth relationships. Here's our dimensional scale. Okay, this is the particle universe. It only shows to D9. It actually goes up to D15, but the paper would have had to be twice as long. But it gives you the idea of the relationship. See where our D1 starts, our dimension 1 frequency band? See its relationship to where the inner Earth D1 frequency band starts. And then to the parallel Earth frequency band. These are all taking place in the density 3 frequency band. However, they're separated by a 45-degree shift in angular rotation of particle spin, which means the particles here actually move a little faster. These move a little less fast than parallel Earth, and those move the slowest. They're all taking place in the same space. If you were to go from Earth to inner Earth, what you would need to do is have your atomic structure shift its angular rotation of particle spin 45 degrees, which is controlled by your Merkaba. And you know it's wonderful. There were 2 charts that I have been trying to figure out how to put together, which was knowing that these are the right speeds to use for the Merkaba. Trying to figure out why, right? With understanding this, with understanding the shifts that need to be made. Now, if you look at how going up the scale, you have a 90, a 90, a 45, a 90, a 90. What this means is there's a 90-degree shift in angular rotation of particle spin between each dimensional band, from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, from 3 to 4. However, in between each set of 3, you also have the negative reverse 45. So you take 45 from 90 and it gives you a positive 45. So there's, instead of having a 90-degree shift in angular rotation of particle spin, you have a 45-degree shift. What somebody finally, because I haven't had time to play with it anymore, to justify how this Merkaba spin goes with that, is Lauren found it for me. She said, well, okay, I know this is right spin, but how does this really work with that? And we kind of, this thing kind of just moved through her and moved through me and said, that's it, you got it, you got it. If you take 33 and a third, and 11 and 2/3, and add them up, what do you get? 45. The combined fields create the 45 shift, so you can move, so you can get out. The other ones don't. They actually create a shift that puts you in line with Nibiru. So that was helpful. But anyway, to answer the question about crystal pylon temples real and physical, yes, they are in this reality space. Okay. Now they used to be here too. Stonehenge used to have part of the setup of them. They used to have a set of crystals there. The first were put in by the Nibiruans, then they were taken down, and our guys put ones in to stop the Nibiruans. Then the Nibiruans got control again and put theirs in. And then our guys got rid of theirs, and everybody's been putting stones there to block the stuff coming out from parallel Earth, where there still is an installation that matches. I'll cover that again later. I know I said that was But anyway, there is a physics involved in understanding the relationship. It's not just like, oh, inner Earth, you're going to go dig and find it. No, you're not going to dig and find it. What you're going to do is shift 45 degrees in your angular rotation of particle spin, you're going to be there. What happens in stellar activation cycles? See this little part down here? It says time vector blend. You have the time continuum that parallel Earth is functioning within. You have ours over there, and you have inner Earths in the middle. During stellar activation cycles, when all the vortices start to open, and the stargates open, they blend, and they become one temporarily. They become one large cycle. So literally you have the reality fields of the three places opening into each other. What this creates is portal zones and stargate zones, where you can literally stand here, move through one, and you're gone from here, and you're over there. Now, in inner Earth, they have kept their stargates open. They have 12 stargates. Actually, they have 24 stargates. They have the 12 that correspond to Earth. They have the 12 that correspond to parallel Earth. And that's where the crystal pylon temples are located. There are 12 out of the 24 stargates that hold a set of crystal pylon temples. Now, I'm going to show you a picture here that I was just so thrilled when Leela showed up in our life. It was really funny. Leela's a person who showed up to one of our workshops in, I think it was January. Then we're going to be doing the Kauai workshop in May. In between January and May, she got this incredible invitation to go along with the scientific expedition to explore something called crystal caverns that had been discovered. And it's really funny. So she was gone. She went to, on this expedition to explore them. And she shows up in Hawaii when we're giving the presentation, when part of our program was releasing all the information on the crystal caverns. All right? Now, the pylon crystal temples aren't these, but this will give you an idea. These pictures will give you an idea of what they look like, and we'll get into what these are later. Let me show you these. But it was so neat to have her show up with the pictures of exactly what we've been talking about. Yeah, these. And Leela has more. This is just a kind of a composite she made for me. She let me have. Okay, can everybody see these? I can pass this around. I don't have an overhead of it, but you said you have a presentation, right?
Well, I thought as a gift, maybe what you could do is I brought all the slides, the original slides, about 55 of them, and they do have a slide projector. And if there is time between now and before we leave for that island,
okay. Yeah, at least some of them may be able to.
Yeah, I mean, it won't take that long.
She's going to give presentations on.
With this advanced room, we could probably shift through them very quickly.
I'll start this here and pass it around so people can look close at it. What I want to show you, what I would like you to notice here first of all, is the size. These are not just crystals photographed. These are crystals with Leela in them. But she's standing on them. And she's like this big. And they're like this big. Right? This size proportion, these would be very tiny crystals compared to what the crystal pylon temples are. These are awesome. The closest thing I've ever seen represented on Earth to be compared closely at all to these temples was a long time ago in a certain Superman movie. When the Superman movies first came out, and they had him in his planet Krypton or whatever, and it had these massive, like crystal caves. That was the closest I said. I love that movie just for that. Oh, home. I want to go home. But these give you an idea. These are actual photographs of something they just found in, Chihuahua, New Mexico? Yeah. Now, these are part of a Nibiruan installation, which we'll get into later. Okay? These are part of what we're helping to heal in our planetary grids work.
Sorry.
What has been found?
Sorry. There was another major crystal cave discovered in northern Spain a few months ago.
Okay, another Spain. Well, you know what they're going to find? There's 24 main ones, okay, primary ones. And there's lots of little small satellite ones around them. The primary ones are nibiruian anchor bases. All right, these crystals are coated to hold the reversal. They're coated, they're brought in from Nibiru and spliced in to the natural crystal beds of Earth. That's why. What was the interesting thing about when we let the scientists said it seemed like they should be millions of years old, but they're only a couple thousand years old. They're only thousands of years old.
Yeah, they're hundreds of thousands of years old as opposed to
really millions of years, right? Which is strange because you have these like crystals that are this old. Even with crystals that are this old, why aren't they all the same age? That kind of thing. Now, the Nibiruian grids weren't set in 25,500 BC. They were set, actually, in the beginning of CD2, when the Nibiruans at the time were part of the Emerald Covenant. They were part of a communications network to Nibiru that allowed easy access and open communication, and they were permitted because they weren't bad things. But then they were added to, and their program was changed when the 25,500 BC takeover was launched. Since that time, these little crystal gritties have been holding the reversal in place, and because they run a program, an electromagnetic sonic program, a standing wave of invisible sound that comes down at one key point. It's the key point on the planet where Battlestar Wormwood links in to the planetary grids and links these grids through the solar gate to Nibiru. That place is Stonehenge. Stonehenge was chosen because you have two primary stargates. Now, if you want to get this planet going on a reverse 11 matrix, which means you want to make sure Stargate 12, where the Christos frequency can come through, is cut off completely, you go after the next highest stargate, Stargate 11. Now, stargates running away, and I'll show you this afternoon some more of these diagrams, because I have some of them, and this is like the new book stuff, that it's just like being simple. I want to tell you about stargates and Q sites. A Q site is the activation site for the stargate. Now on Earth, we have our stargate sites, which we'll show you the maps of, and we also have their Q sites, which are the activation sites that are located in different places. The Q sites are positioned right over the crystal pylon temples of inner Earth. That's why they're the Q sites. When they activate, and there's ways that can be manually activated, but only under human coding, or they will activate as a natural part of the stellar activation cycle, regulated by the guardians of the crystal pylon temples in inner Earth. When they activate, the Q site activates, it triggers activation of the stargate. So you have basically a set of 12 stargates and a set of 12 Q sites. And you have a stargate here and a Q site here, and there's a line of frequency, a line of energy in the grids that runs between them. Stonehenge is placed right here between Q site 11 and Stargate 11. Q site 11 is in Ireland. Stargate 11 is in England. And Stonehenge interfaces that line and runs a different program. So when Q site 11 is all set up for the stellar activation cycle, when Q site 11 activates, it hits that program of the reversal, sends its frequency down in reverse, reverses activation on Stargate 11, so it activates on a reverse current, and it will trigger activation of all the other Q sites and Stargates below it on the reverse. It will do complete reversal of the planetary grids and take the crystal pylon temple network with it as it goes. This was what this whole thing was set up to do. This was a long-term plan we're a part of. And we would have known it if they hadn't gotten rid of our history, and that's why they got rid of the history. They wanted to make sure when the year 2017 AD came, that nobody knew anything, and little humans would just do the job for them by running reverse codes in to help hold the reversal. They would drop their security codes from the DNA, that they wouldn't even know they had security codes anymore, because all of that information would be taken away from them. And they would simply come in. Once we open the codes, they'd get rid of us. We were no longer needed. And then they would come in and take over again. We have been part of a setup. That's what blew my mind. I mean, I have a lot of memory of some really lousy things that had happened, and also some good things that had happened in the past. When it was all brought into focus for me, which was after September of 2000. I knew pieces and parts. I knew there were agendas on it, but I did not know the scope. When the scope hit me, I was just like numb for a while. Just like, oh my God. They had planned this all along. The plan came in to real solidification in Atlantis. It's known as the Atlantean conspiracy. And it's interesting because it wasn't just one group. Once the Thoth groups and their nibiruian allies got into the planetary grids and got rid of the Iani races to a large degree, then there was a couple other races on the planet who also had hybrids in the bioregenesis program. Now the Anunnaki, combined with human DNA template, was used for both draconian rehab and for Anunnaki rehab. So you had draconians running around in Anunnaki human bodies, and you had Anunnaki running around in Anunnaki human bodies, and then of course you had humans in human bodies. When the Nibiruan Anunnaki got to the point where they had a potential of this really working, that made the other Anunnaki groups and the Drac groups very upset because they don't get along with each other. They've been fighting for millions of years. So there's another group called the Jehovian Anunnaki. They're the Cirrus A bipedal dolphin. When you see them, they literally look like mutated upright dolphins that have feet instead of flippers and little hands that stick out, and they're really homely. I mean, we're probably really ugly to them too, so it's like, it's just relative. Now, interestingly, there's another being, who had incarnated into human form out of their makers, who had, just like Thoth had in his day, fulfilled the bioregenesis program, so he had been able to get his Anunnaki Cirrus A personhood into a human form. And he was appointed, well trusted, appointed as the guardian over the portions of the bioregenesis program on Earth that had Cirrus A, Jehovian Anunnaki souls. This person was Enoch. Right? Now, Enoch was known, loved, and beloved for many, many thousands of years. When Thoth went back and he decided to support the Luciferian Antichristos agenda in 22,340 is when he decided he would do that. And then it was because of what he did in 326 BC, just like past 326 BC, he went to a place for the destruction of the Iani. That was called the Great Deception. It was an event in history on plates that is recorded as the Great Deception, 326 BC, when so the final thing of bringing in the Anunnaki raiders to destroy the Iani. Enoch stayed loyal to the Emerald Covenant. He didn't want anything to do with it. He stayed loyal. With progressively more pressure being launched. Now, after the planetary grids were covered enough where everybody could come up from underneath the ground again, because whenever stuff like this would happen, people would either be evac'd if there was time, but usually there wasn't. What the guardian races would do to protect the races, the human races, was to get the portals to inner Earth open and get as many of them in as they could until the planetary grid stabilized. Then, when they were stabilized, they go into subterranean, like living in caves and caverns. And some of them were allowed. They're beautiful underground civilizations. Some of them are under Egypt right now, and they know they're there. And they're absolutely not releasing any information about it. So they would go, cataclysm would happen, enough of the human races would be evac'd out. And they would evac, the Anunnaki ones too, or the Draconian ones, if they were part of the Emerald Covenant. The only ones they wouldn't take the security risk on were the ones that were trying to take over. That was up to their guys to rescue. And sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't bother. So after that cataclysm, there was an ice, there was like periods of ice, and glacial periods, and the grids were really unstable, but not for too long. So the 12 tribes were easily seeded back again in their same locations. They were always seeded in the same locations. They were the Stargate Guardians. So they were seeded on the 24 locations that went with the Stargates, the 12 Stargates and the 12 Q sites. They were the seed of where the human civilizations were always repeatedly placed. So the races came back, and they were regenerated. We weren't destroyed. There was enough time, we had had enough warning to get, before the pole shift happened, to get enough of the races in the inner Earth. Did the thing of coming back into the subterranean caverns in a few hundred years, and then coming back on surface to start over again. Did that. Atlantis is where all of this kept festering, let's say, and progressively getting worse and worse. Because once everybody was back on the playing board, it was not just the humans, it was the people in the bioregenesis programs, which were the hybrids, and of course, where the hybrids were, you would have the ones that were trying to take over the hybrids to use them as the dominant force to get rid of humans here. So Atlantis turned into a fiasco, where the original Grail King lines, the remnants of the Iani, who were holding the frequency and the guardians of the grids, were progressively being raided and attacked by certain groups of the hybrid races that have been conned into following the fallen angelic agenda. One of them was Toth's group. Enoch stayed loyal to the Emerald Covenant until 10,500 BC, when at this point most of Atlantis had fallen. A large portion of Egypt had fallen to Anunnaki control, and he was getting huge amounts of pressure from his groups of Anunnaki that it looks like the Anunnaki are going to take over here. And if they do, and you have resisted being a part of them all along, they're going to destroy your Jacobian Anunnaki races, because you are being disloyal to the Anunnaki race in their interpretation. So Enoch was faced with a choice. It looked like the Anunnaki were going to wipe out the humans in the next stellar activation cycle. He had a choice to try to stay true to the Emerald Covenant and lead his people into that, taking the chance that if the humans weren't able to hold the grids, that the other Tothian groups of Anunnaki would take over and absolutely despise their groups of Anunnaki because they wouldn't help them, because they wouldn't join them. Enoch joined the Luciferian Covenant, and he led his people into joining the Luciferian Covenant. The Luciferian Covenant, now the name Lucifer, is actually a combined family name with a characterization that came out of a family name of certain groups of Anunnaki. So was Satan. It was Satan, not Satan. But they were both Anunnaki draconian lines, like mixed Anunnaki draconian lines. The Luciferian Covenant had Toth's line. Now, Toth's line is the Toth-Enki Cephalian lineage. It's a family, like a race of Anunnaki. You hear about Enki, Enlil, and Marduk in the old Sumerian legends and all that stuff. They weren't just people. They weren't gods. They were races of Anunnaki that were related but different from each other. Because some had more draconian coding than others. Some didn't have draconian coding. Some were reptilian, some were part insectoid. The Toth-Enki ones, when we say Toth-Enki, because that's where Toth came out. That was his lineage. The Enki lineage was Enki Zephalian. Zephalian was another word for Zeph. The little gray things that run around? They're created by the Zephalian race, which are these things that are much taller than like really ugly wide blue faces and things. Well, I will stop using terms like that. It's not my judgment call. The Toth-Enki group of Anunnaki were loyal to them. That's why the Zetas got interested in here real early, because they were part of representatives of the Luciferian Covenant. Then there was the Enlil group. They call it Enlil Odetikon Anunnaki. They shared Nibiru with the Toth-Enki group. They were part reptilian, not insectoid. They were part reptilian. So they were part of the reptilians from Orion. They were a hybrid race. Then you had the Marduk line. And there was two lines of those. The main one was the Marduk Brahmin line. That was the Dragon Queen. They were Omicron, Draconian, mixed with Anunnaki. These are races. These are the ones that are visiting us today, by the way. You have all sorts of Sumerian gods talking to people now. They weren't Sumerian gods. They were visitors of fallen angelic agendas. Now, the Toth-Enki groups, the Enlil, Nibiruian Anunnaki groups, the part of the Marduk groups, all joined together. In 10,500 BC, Enoch's Jacobian Anunnaki groups joined together. And there was one other group called the Palladian Samjaze Anunnaki. These are the ones that, if anybody knows the Billy Myers story, that this pretty blonde Barbie doll-like ET in a pretty spaceship comes down and leads a grinning Samjaze. Well, she is a representative of their culture. They're from the Pleiades. They have control of part of Alcyon, but not the whole thing in density 2. And they're known as the Luciferian race also, because they're connected to the Toth-Enki Luciferian races and the Marduk Luciferian races of Nibiru. This is a big family party, is what's going on here. They, at times there's family feuding, and then at other times they get together. Well, they formed, they collected each other, and they decided they'd all agree that yes, we can all do this together. And if we all do it together, we can probably succeed. So there was an agenda established. It was a Luciferian agenda, which meant finishing off the reverse 11 matrix on this planet for this particular coming stellar activation cycle. They were sick of waiting for stellar activation cycles, and they were really tired of Guardians coming in and stopping them every time they had a chance, because they had gotten so close in 22,326 BC. So they decided that when the next stellar activation cycle came, they were going to be ready. They were going to make it so the Guardians couldn't do anything about it. They formed in 9060 BC an official agreement called the Luciferian Covenant. Enoch was a part of that agreement. He later broke it and went over to something called the Jehovian Covenant, which was standing against that one to do its own bullshit. So now everybody wanted to get in on taking over, since it looked like somebody was going to be able to grab the halls of the Mente during the next activation cycle. It became a kind of a contest between the Draconian legions of Orion, which are the Omicron Draconian, and the Odedicon Reptilian races, and the Zephalian Zeta races. The Anunnaki, what are called the Anu Seraphi, they're the Anunnaki hybrid, where they have either reptilian or draconian or insectoid lines with them. Then you have the pure strain Anunnaki, which aren't part of the Anu Seraphim. They are the Jehovian and Elohim Anunnaki. They all decided to compete with each other, because they didn't like each other, and they were afraid that if one of them got control of the House of Mente, they would launch a campaign of destroying the others. So, it became a three-way Atlantean conspiracy. Everybody was going to go after the humans, right? To make sure they could be used for the purpose they were needed for in the stellar activation cycle and then disposed of. And then whoever won the Grand Hurrah, which was predicted in the Bible, was the Battle of Armageddon. This wasn't even a human battle. This was the knowledge. The Jehovians put that stuff out because they knew the final conflict between the Jehovians and the Draconians and the Anunnaki, other groups, the Anu-Seraphim, were all going to come to a head. Nobody was even caring about the humans at this point. They figured that they would be able to wipe them out. They had done such a good job at mutating the race strains through interbreeding, where most of the populations were picking up part of the reversals in their DNA codes just from intermingling. Then they wiped out the Magi lines, like really reduced the numbers to where they didn't think they would be able, the negative sides didn't think that we'd be able to regenerate them enough or keep them hidden, because there was a campaign that was part of the Luciferian Covenant, was to make sure, pursue at all costs, the Magi Grail lines, kill them. Okay, save a few of them to open the main security codes, because we carry the big security codes. After everybody else drops their security codes right into the grids, after their DNA runs, then the Magis run. They have the big codings. If they don't drop the frequency from their DNA template, the codes into the grids, they will not open them. And it will create pole shift if we don't open them. This was done as a precaution that if the Magi races were not present on Earth to open those seals, something was wrong. And so those seals would stay closed, and it would make pole shift happen. If something happened to the Magi races where we weren't here, it would create pole shift, and they wouldn't be able to open the inner Earth portals. So this place would shift, but the other wouldn't. Inner Earth would still be protected, and the halls of the Mente would still be protected. Because if the halls of the Mente are not protected, and they fall in the wrong hands, this whole time matrix is in big trouble. All of the races of the Original Covenant will be immediately put on the target list for destruction. And this will not be a nice place to live. Yes?
What are the halls of the Mente? What are the halls of the Mente?
The halls of the Mente are the set of crystal pylon temples. The set of crystal pylon temples that I talked about, that hold open the natural stargate systems of inner Earth, through to inner Terra, through to inner Gaia, all the way up to D15. It is an ascension passage, if you will, or a stargate passage. You can take the halls of the Mente to get into most of the other stargate systems anywhere in the 5 densities.
So the Stone Age was mentioned was crystal, and it's now been capped with those large stones.
Yes.
Why is it that Avebury has got crystal in it? In Avebury, and I noticed in other local stones that there are crystals in the stone.
Well, I have to get more data on exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I know those areas, the area we're going to go to clear in England isn't at Stonehenge. We're clearing Stonehenge by going to where the gate site is, which is, they're going to identify the exact site once we get there. It's part of the security release stuff, but it's in the Vale of Pusey area, and I think that's the area that's in the area of what you're talking about, isn't it? They call it the Vale of Pusey area.
Oh, what, between Stonehenge and Avebury?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that area. So there's more to come on that. It's under security clearance that we'll know, as we move toward the England thing. Just like there's more to come on the site work that we're going to be doing here. We know where we're going, we know part of why, but there's some more that will be given to us probably on site.
Can I ask a question? Just what connection is there with Avebury and Stonehenge? So Stonehenge was originally crystal. Avebury is supposed to be older than that. So what was it? Avebury Stonehenge?
Avebury isn't exactly where the Stargate is, first of all, but it's on the line. Okay, there's a set of ley lines that run through the area that connects Stonehenge and connect the Stargate, which connects to Ireland, that connects to the Q site, and those kind of things. Avebury isn't the most important area. There's all sorts of little networks in there. Right? In fact, there's a whole string of St. Michael's churches that runs down all through England and Europe, and I think they go into France and probably into Spain, that are anchoring lines for this program that's being run through the Stonehenge area. I guess it's funny, I'm not doing a sequence with this, and I think this is good, because it's allowing some free space here. I want to show you another graph that will first of all help to explain what I just talked about, as far as how could they possibly do something like this. It sounds like something only in the sci-fi channel. No. I'll show you if I can find it. These are the graphs that drive me crazy, trying to get them all right. Right here, and the graphs that come back. So this is talking about okay, we're going to take 5, and anybody wants to grab a copy and bring it back in? Yes. And this morning we were talking about some of the amazing atrocities that have actually been done here. And it's almost, when I present these things, I almost do it with a sense of awe. Where I don't do it with a sense of fear, but just to think that there are races that have technologies, that we used to have technology that we could have if we ever wanted to do something like this. But in our culture, our sciences are so limited and so small. To even think that something like reversing the polarity of a planet and plugging it into something that was not its original matrix to get it to, connect and orbit from one planet to another to affect its stargates, that's like science fiction stuff. I was in awe. Even though I knew stargates were real, I've actually been through them. Of course, not stargates this time. When I was a child, I was taken in Earth a couple of times. And I do know that, so I know they're real. I talk from experience. I know portals are real, and from memory, from other incarnations, we used to use them freely. But when they showed me the sophistication of what the Nibiruians had done here, I was just awestruck. It's almost like a morbid fascination. Oh my gosh, look at the technology, look at the knowledge it would take to do something like this. This graph is fun. I didn't even have time to typeset the names of the planets up there, but that eventually, when the book is done, it will be done. Now, what this graph is showing, first of all, it's the natural particle galaxy and natural antiparticle galaxy. It's showing what's called the galactic Merkaba, okay? How the Merkaba fields of the sun connect to the Merkaba fields of the planets to create an open conduit of frequency. So when the solar stargate opens, it brings down frequency from the higher densities and the higher density stargates down into our system and then feeds the planets in our system with the primal life force currents. The natural alignment in the particle universe, where we are, is the sun has an electrical, it's considered an electrical harmonic Merkaba. Okay, that is a 3-dimensional harmonic Merkaba. It also has in each dimension 3 small ones, but the 3 small ones are controlled by the major harmonic Merkaba. So, in the particle universe, in density 2, the solar Merkaba is electrical. It plugs into magnetic Merkabas. In density 1, it holds the planets. This is where the gravitational pull is actually generated from. This is how planets stay in orbit around their suns. Their suns have an electrical, in the particle universe, the suns have an electrical field that goes into density 2, that plugs into the density 1 magnetic fields of the planets. And it creates spirals. These are called solar spirals. They're electrical spirals, antiparticle spirals, that come down and latch into the Earth's core through the Earth's Templar, through the Stargate system, and through the planetary shields. So that's the natural orientation. What I'm showing over here is there's Earth. Now Earth, when it was doing it, when it was not distorted, had 11 2/3 counterclockwise magnetic harmonic Merkaba that went with the solar Merkaba that was 33 1/3 electrical clockwise spin. That's what kept the natural flow of the life force currents coming down. The universal Kundalini, the universal Maharada, the universal Kirishe, and the universal Kundera. Nibiru is a planet that it originally did not have. If you read any of the stuff that's out there from the Anunnaki on Nibiru, they kind of tell you about, yes, Nibiru has this little reversed orbit that comes into your galaxy and then goes out to the Sirius system. It didn't always. This is not the normal orbital axis for Nibiru. Normally, Nibiru is the furthest planet out in our system. And it also had the magnetic 11 2/3 Merkaba. That is the normal setting. Now over here in parallel Earth, parallel galaxy, which is the antiparticle galaxy, which is a mirror, and I'll show you in a minute how they kind of fit together down here in this diagram. In the parallel, the reverse, the solar spirals or the solar Merkaba is magnetic at 11 2/3, and the planetary ones are all electrical at 33 1/3 rotation. So there's a different balance between particles and antiparticles here, and a different one here. Now, the electrical, what this means as far as particles and antiparticles, in the natural lineup, in the 33 1/3, it means you have 33 1/3 electrical antiparticles to 11 2/3 magnetic particles from the particle universe. We're talking about part of Chi, part of K, and part of Cum here. Now, part of Chi separate to become particle and antiparticle, the foundation units of energy. To form those, you would here have 33 1/3 part of K, which form the antiparticles, over a ratio of 11 2/3 of part of Cum, or the magnetic drawing particles. Now, that's the normal orientation that allows the energy to flow through from density 1 to density 2. There's other ratios that connect density 2 to density 3 and density 3 to density 4. When the systems are working right, all you have to do is set this one and have the spins working this way, and all the rest spin the way they're supposed to. So you don't even have to worry about activating, like if you're doing this on a personal level. Once you get the Merkaba here spinning right, it'll automatically flip the other ones into the right rotations. And in fact, the other ones, the other parts of our Merkaba fields, they can't plug in to the ones we have here right now because these are distorted. They're already still spinning the way they're supposed to. It's our fields down here. Because of this alignment that's happened in the planet, it's supposed to be like that. It's been changed. They've been actually reversed, where we're functioning like this. We have right now a magnetic spiral coming down from the sun, and they have reversed the planetary magnetic to an electrical to plug into it. And they've changed the spin ratios. Right now, they're going on a 34 magnetic and 21 electrical, which means they've completely inverted the balance between particles and antiparticles. It's getting denser and denser and denser here. If this were allowed to continue, it would eventually start to affect not only the Earth's density 1 shield, the telluric shield. It would start to contaminate the shields of Tara and Gaia, and it would eventually put the whole planet in reverse. Now, if the whole planet went in reverse on all its harmonics, this is what would happen. Right here, down in the corner on this graph, and these, I wanted to have these ready, but these were the books that we were just getting, stuff to put together. And I was told that we didn't need to have them, to hand out to everybody. You have field manuals is what, that's what's needed now. These books with all these graphs and stuff will be available. They're almost done. We'll have them done as soon as we get home. I have about 2 more days to work on them. But this down here shows you a couple of things. First of all, this set of spirals here that are made with regular lines, they're not broken lines, but they're regular lines. That's the orbital planes of our galaxy, okay? You have the sun and you have our planets coming out. You know how the scientists have that little diagram where they show, the little orbitals, the ellipses, with the sun in the middle and all the planets on their little orbital ellipses. Well, this part of that diagram shows that. This particular one is governed by the electrical Merkaba coming down from the sun, or it's supposed to be when it's operating right. Literally, like on the flip side of this, you have the antiparticle system. All right, that's where the parallel fits. They fit like that, and you're not going to see the double because you only see one, depending on which one you're in. We're seeing ours when you go out in space and send telescopes up. You can get an image of the one that's on this side, but to get an image of the one that's in the antiparticle universe, you have to send telescope with a camera up on antiparticle Earth, off antiparticle Earth. But they're totally interrelated, and there's continually a flow of energy because the antiparticle Earth has its magnetic solar Merkaba here, and they feed energy back and forth to each other. And then what these do is they feed energy back and forth between the higher systems, the higher dimensional systems of both parallel and in the particle universe. So this is how these two systems relate to each other. They're not just like completely separated. In fact, they're all taking place in the exact same space. It's the angular rotation of particle spin that makes them separate, where you can be in this one and you're not in that one, that kind of thing. But actually, we're in both. What this implies is that everything here has a double there, including us. This is kind of fascinating, and some people are getting bleed through on it. I've met a couple of people who have, for a number of years now, been getting some really strange experiences where they find themselves as them. It's a body that looks like them. It's a world that's similar to theirs, but not exactly the way it is here. And one of the key tricks of identifying if you've stumbled onto having your consciousness merge for a moment or two, or in a dream, with your parallel self, is you'll find yourself upside down first. It's as if your consciousness is upside down and you're looking at the world upside down, and then it kind of shifts, and you're upright again. That upside downness that you get is literally like you're having a dream go down in your head, and you're sleeping and you're aware of the dream, and all of a sudden you shift into a place where it's like somebody tipped it upside down, and the landscape is literally upside down. That's where you made the transition, but your consciousness didn't quite flip yet, and it kind of flips over in slow motion, and okay, you're oriented. That's one of the little clues to tell you it's not just astral projection, or it's not just this or that. If you get that upside down and then it corrects itself in a dream experience or in a meditation or in a vision that flips through, you're getting pictures of antiparticle. Okay, you're getting pictures that are coming through what you're experiencing as your double self over there. Now, particle Earth, I'll talk about a little bit. Particle Earth is in big trouble. They have the same thing happen to them. See, this wouldn't have worked at all if it wasn't initiated on both particle and antiparticle Earth at the same time. In 25,500 BC, this setup was orchestrated on both. Here, we still have an opportunity, because their timeline runs a little faster than ours. The particle system and antiparticle system go on basically the energy units that are contained within particum and part K. Part K oscillate a bit faster than particum do. So the time cycles in the matter base in the antiparticle system moves a little faster than it does in the particum system. So it'll happen there first, whatever it is, and then it will translate into action here. So literally, your antiparticle self, your double, will experience events that you will then experience. And what happens in ascension is when you do angular rotation of particle spin, release it from this time vector, you blend with that one. So literally, both of you become one. You take on both sets of memories. You know that you were both at the same time. And then you go up to the next level. You go up into the next density level. So part of the process of ascension is combining with your antiparticle self. Now, the antiparticle universe has succumbed to this situation as well. And they're not faring as well as we are. The reason we're faring as well as we are right now is because we haven't got to the point in the timelines that they are in. And the crucial time is going to be between now and 2003. In 2003, there is something that in the Voyager's books was first just described as the dimensional blend experiment that the Illuminati had intended for 2003. In 2003, there's something called the magnetic peak, which is when the Merkaba fields start to spin faster. That's their fastest spin peak, and then they start to slow down a little, and then they pick up. There's a 100-year cycle, and there's smaller daily cycles, but the big ones are the 100-year cycle and the 20-year cycle. When the magnetic peaks happen, and the Merkaba start to spin the fastest, it's when the, let's say, frequency veils between the density levels are the thinnest. Now, on 2 occasions, the Zeta groups, which represent the Draconian agenda, were involved with what's called the Philadelphia Experiment and the Montauk Project. Both of them were done on 20-year increments. One was done in 1943, and then the other one was done, not the next set of 20, but it was done in 1983. These were dimensional blend experiments where supposedly they were trying to make, I think in the Montauk one, they were trying to make a battleship disappear. Actually, one came out of the other. They were trying to make a battleship disappear in 1943, and it popped up in 1983. And they were doing, Yeah, they were trying to do a time blend thing, supposedly, to provide cloaking, because it was, it was wartime, trying to provide cloaking for ships and things like that. It wasn't for cloaking, that was a cover story. What they were trying to do was get a handle on orchestrating this. The Dracs had come in knowing the Anunnaki were planning to do this, and they had planned all along to get control here first. So when it came time to who was going to take a mente, it was going to be them. That's why the Zetas came in, and they started scouting in the 1920s, and they made treaties with several world governments in the 1930s. They've been here, and we've had treaties that we don't know about as the general public for 70 years. So this stuff has been going on for a long time. The magnetic peak periods are the periods when you can do little things because timelines cross. Now, the next period of peak is going to be 2003. In 2003, they have another little experiment planned that's part of the whole thing. What they intend to do is bring in ships under cloak, which means they will park them in the fourth dimensional frequency band. Now, that means they will not appear on radar here. We will not be able to detect them with the technologies we have here. They're planning to bring the ships in and position large numbers of them over 24 very specific points. The 12 Q sites and the 12 Stargate sites. Then what they intend to do is to beam a photosonic beam. Now, these are beam ships. They have the ability to transmit and hold a photosonic beam, which is a standing wave of sound. Okay? Inaudible sound. They're planning to transmit these beams down into Earth. They're planning to have them pick up. This is why the HARP technologies were set up. They tell you all sorts of things about why HARP is such a good thing, and it's really just our government doing it. There's nothing negative about it. Yeah, right? It was set up to receive the transmissions of the beam ships that they're planning to bring in 2003. Once the HARP technologies, and there's several of them, it's not just the ones you hear about in Alaska, and I think there's another in Australia, and there's a couple others, but there's several units like these. Once they anchor the frequencies there, they'll be able to transmit them down into the grids. They're going to beam into the HARP setups and into the 24 sites simultaneously. And they're going to create something, if they get to do it, they're going to create something called a frequency fence, which means they're going to completely block and jam the circuits on Earth, so nothing else can communicate here, first of all. What it's also going to do, if it's set in motion, which we're going to stop it from being set in motion, if it's set in motion, it would create an impossibility biologically for the human body to anchor anything more than three-dimensional consciousness. All this DNA strand activation that we're working so hard to achieve, that would happen naturally as the grids begin to pick up speed, that would be cut right off, because they will block the frequencies. So we can't access them, they'll block them in the Earth's grids. Once they have the human mind harnessed, then they can project certain other frequencies, just like we can project pictures from a projector onto a screen. They're called holographic inserts. Once you have a frequency range defined and quarantined, you can then project other frequencies into it. They can make us see anything they want us to see, if they were successful in getting this set up. This is, talk about the word antichrist. This technology definitely fits into that toolbox. The purpose of doing that would simply be a couple of things. The ultimate objective of all of them is to ensure that these stargates continue to activate. And they have to do this in a weird way, because if they block everything, they won't go stop the activation of the stargates, which is not what they want to do. They need the stargates to activate, but on a reverse code. Because if they don't activate and the portals in the Earth don't open, they're not going to be able to create reversal of the crystal pylon temples. The frequency fence serves a temporary purpose in blocking human consciousness so the DNA activations don't continue. And the real reason they're doing the frequency fence is because they know the indigos are here. The indigos are the one thing that can rapidly activate enough frequency, clear their DNA templates, and stop them from doing all of this. If they can frequency jam the indigo DNA templates, we cannot run the Kirishite and Kundra without being able to run that. We can't stop the grids from going in reverse. However, they still need indigos because they still have the security codes. So they plan to keep people, the indigos and everybody else, under this mind control, bioneurologically induced mind control that's run through psychotronic technology, until key points when they loosen it just a little to allow indigos to run their codes. in reverse, because the grids are still running in reverse, because they need the security codes put in. And it's interesting, because there's a hunting program that goes along with it. If they got that far, which they won't, but if they got that far. See, they know indigos. Indigos have been cataloged as they came in by the Zeta races. There are running lists in computer banks off-planet that know every one of us. They know our bloodlines, our family lines. They probably even know, have a DNA scan on us. They know who's going to drop codes when, even though we don't know who's going to drop codes when. Once you drop your codes, you're no longer needed. You're a threat. There's a hunting program that will be run through the governments, quietly. The main people in the government don't know anything about this. They're being used and tricked just like anybody else. It's only a few small collectives in the world governments that form what's called the World Management Team that are behind all of this. And you can look up stuff from just about anywhere that talks about things like the Bilderberg Commission and some of the other ones, the NSA and that World Bank thing.
Jesus Society,
yeah, all of these things. These are the main controlling families of the Illuminati behind them. All right, the rest of the people that even work with them don't realize what they're up to, and half the time, the Illuminati guys don't really realize the degree of what they're up against. They do know that there's going to be bullshit. That's what they've been told. Okay, nobody's said anything about it's going to be forced. What they think is happening is because planet Nibiru is coming back into our orbital system, that always creates pole shift every time it happens just because of the magnetic effects. That's a bunch of bull, is what it is. The Illuminati people have been fed this bunch of bull. They are prepared. They've been scrambling, trying to figure out how the heck to get off planet. So they've been making deals to get themselves taken off planet. That's part of the reason they went into the Zeta treaties. The Zetas told them, well, we're here because we know that this cataclysm is coming to your planet, and we're trying to help. We can't take everybody. But if you let us do certain things, we'll be able to help some of you. So, of course, the list for who's the some of us started to, okay, I'm going to go. So all these deals were made. And this is where the hardcore Illuminati came out of. It started with MJ-12, which is Majestic 12, that came out of the U.S. But there were simultaneous organizations being set up in other places. So at this point, if this thing goes ahead, we're just going to watch an amazing set of events. And after 2004, it would take between 2003 and 2004 to get the full frequency fence established. By then, we'll be in bliss. It'll be like taking electronic... I try not to say brand names because these videos get places. But, it was a kind of like a frequency hijacker. We won't know that anything's wrong. Not that most of us know now anyway. The sad part is, what the ultimatum in the agenda is, if they get that far, then there's going to be some problems, or there was going to be some problems. This is where Armageddon was going to fit in originally, because the Anunnaki were not going to let the Dracs come in and just take their technology out from under them. They worked so hard to build this technology to grab the hells of the Mente, I don't think they were going to do it without a fight. They were planning on a battle with the Dracs, and the Dracs were planning on a battle with them. But there's another group that's been here and trying to get control of the thing too, and they're called the Necromaton. These are the men in black people, okay? They're a hybrid race. They're, at this point, part human, part Andromi from the Andromeda system. And that's what they're called the Necromaton. That's what the Andromies are called. That's the name of that particular race. And they have had a vested interest in getting control of the gates as well. So they got in the middle of it. Usually, the Necromaton don't like anybody else. And if they got control of everything, they plan like the others do to exterminate everything that's not of their own. All right, this is what all of the fallen angelic races have in common. If they get control, they tend to do genocide. Nothing is worth being here except their own. Except unless it's useful for feeding off of, or for using as slave labor. But most things will simply be, especially humans, because humans are a big threat to the Anti-Christos agenda because we carry the Christos codes. They would get rid of every human in this galaxy if any of them got hold of it. Now, what the Necromaton have done, as they're watching this thing go down between the Anunnaki and the Dracs, the Anunnaki joined in 1992, decided to enter the Emerald Covenant. Not because they wanted to, but because they were watching how much control the Dracs had gotten over the grids since they came in the 1930s. They were afraid they might just lose, so they decided that they would be friends with the Guardian groups, or will help with the Christos mission. It's fine, it would be nice if you did. This is what the Guardians were hoping for. So, the Palladian-Syrian agreements were made, where the Anunnaki were going to join with the Emerald Covenant guardian groups to make a stand and to make sure the Drax didn't get control of the Halls of the Mente Gates. Part of this deal was they were supposed to turn over the nibiruian grids so we could get the Merkaba back the way it was supposed to be. Because if it wasn't fixed, by the time the stargates of 5 and 6 started to open, it was going to put it in a natural pole shift. So they had agreed to turn Solar Stargate 4, which they have partial control over. They're going to turn it back over to Emerald Covenant guardianship, which they stole it from in the first place. They had been entrusted way back with having partial control because they were Emerald Covenant, and when the planet got taken over, it still had its link to the Solar Stargates. That's how they got access to doing any of this. So in 1992, these agreements were made. And everybody, this is where the New Age movement started to take on a happy, happy, joy, joy. There was not that underpinning of tension that had been there before. Because all of a sudden, everybody was going to be supposedly teaching the proper Merkaba teachings, and they were going to let you know that the Christ story, well, it wasn't exactly that way. It was told that way. They were going to have their way of getting out of the fact that they directly lied. And they were going to tell you, they had to. If they were going to enter the Emerald Covenant, they had to reveal the truth, or we would reveal it for them, as far as what the history was. But it could be done the easy way or the hard way. The easy way would be gently, in increments, on an as-need-to-know basis to prepare people for the next level. The hard way was bang, here it is, and this is what we're in the middle of. In 1992, because they were afraid they'd lose to the Drax, they joined the Emerald Covenant. When January 1st, 2000 rolled around, and the stellar bridge anchored on a 12-code pulse, that means, oh dear, now there's a threat to everybody's agenda that wants to take over, because the D12 frequency can be used to override everything we've set up. The Indigos and the Emerald Covenant people can come here and really take it back. They didn't expect it was going to fully go this time. They were just going to make deals to see if they could get control of the grids in the meantime and ground the stellar bridge themselves. We anchored the stellar bridge. We helped this group. Our group did, and a number of other groups that don't know us yet, and we don't know them, that were guided and actually had clear guidance because they're Indigos, and they had the clear channels coming through. Asked them to do energy work between December 31st of 99 and January 1st, 2000. And we were working at the Gruoch point, which is the central control point for Earth's planetary shields. And we had no idea the significance of what we were, doing. We didn't have the history yet that showed that this 12-code pulse hadn't been there for 200,000 years, and it's because of this that we progressively been raided and taken over. So the whole game changed. The Anunnaki got a little nervous, like, oh no, there's a real chance to go in and take it. It's also their chance that the guys we just made deals with, it's their chance to take it out from under us. They didn't enter the Pleiadian agreements because they had a change of heart and decided to be spiritually sweet and nice people. They entered it because they felt their mission wasn't going to be able to be accomplished, and perhaps they could use their alliance with the large groups of Emerald Covenant guardian races to at least get the Drax out of the way. Then they could turn on us and try to take it out from under us. When the grid's activated on a 12-code pulse, whole bunches of them immediately broke the Pleiadian agreements. There was all sorts of negotiations set up with any of them that were still willing to talk to try to get them to come back and fulfill what they had promised. They decided, most of them, it would be better to allow the place to go into pole shift, get to continue with the plan. But there was still the issue of dealing with the Drax. They had got enough fortification by some of the Elohim groups from Density 4, who said, we'll back you, we'll help you take care of the Drax. Okay? They didn't need Emerald Covenant people anymore. However, this triggered something called the Orion War in Density 3. When the grid's activated here in January 2000, there was a war that started in some of the planets in the Orion system on Density 3. You're not going to see it from Density 1, but it was happening in Density 3, where the Draconian races and the Elohim races started to go at it. And the Draconians started to win. Now this gave a bargaining tool to the Emerald Covenant races. The bargaining tool was, if you come back and agree and follow the agreements you promised to in 1992, we will help you and to protect your holdings in Orion, because you're getting decimated and your races are getting decimated there, and they're getting enslaved and being used as draconian slaves. And boy, that's one big way to insult the Anunnaki that has 11 strands reversed, to put it under control of the 10-strand reverse, being that it can't stand. All right? they were having a lot of problems in not winning the Iranian wars. So that negotiation tool allowed for something on July 5th of 2000. There was another treaty made. It was called the Treaty of Altair. Altair in density 3 was chosen. It is just a planet that has neutral ground, where it's not, either side is not, ours is not theirs. It's a group called the Brahmarama that kind of stay out of everything and just try to help where they can. Kind of like Switzerland tries to be. We're neutral. We don't want to get involved. But they will sometimes assist in political negotiations. So the Treaty of Altair was formed in July 5th, 2000. And what got the Anunnaki to come back in that treaty was the fact that they were in real trouble in the Iranian wars. And if they lost it there, they were going to be in real trouble down here. Because the only thing that made them break the code in the first place was they got cocky. Because they had all this fortification from their big guys up in density 3. Well, the big guys up in density 3 were taking a mighty loss. So it was like this really interesting political mess that was taking place. The Treaty of Altair was entered on July 5th, 2000. Our groups were sent to Peru to begin the transfer of the coding on Solar Stargate 4 and preparing the planetary grids to hold that alignment. Peru went wonderfully. We had the total cooperation, no resistance. Then we were supposed to do the big finale, which was come to England and go to Stonehenge and recode the nibiruian crystal grid that's there, the thing that they're anchoring all of this mess with in the grids. It was going to be recoded to the D12 frequencies, so it would still run, but it would actually assist in more rapidly restoring the D12 template to the planetary shields. And it would also realign, without causing pole shift, it would realign the Merkabah of Earth. It would switch it back to the way it's supposed to be. Well, that on September 12th, everything fell apart. I came over to do my first workshops introducing Cathara, and by the way, excuse me, we're really over here to, to transfer the grids back to the D12. They broke the treaty. I got hit with a psychic attack like I never had before. The groups, the workshops we were running are always run on secured grid lines because we won't have people open Kundalini and do Merkaba on grids that are contaminated. So there was a whole bunch of grid lines that were originally controlled by the Anunnaki that they had agreed to protect and keep the Dracs out of while our groups were taught Cathara so they could begin working with the frequencies. Well, they took that right out from under us. They used the grids against me to try to nail me, and which is hard to do with the Mahara shield. It was a real special way they had to work things through other people that were connected to my soul matrix. That was the only way they could even touch my fields. And I felt like I had piranhas loose in my fields. I could feel it ripping my astral body apart. And it was amazing. I never experienced anything like that before. Managed to pull myself together and said, what is going on? And one of Enoch has been like kind of a gopher for me. I hate to put it that way, but really that was his assignment. He's on a redemption contract because since he went bad made the bad decision in 10,500. In 1983, he came back into the Animal Covenant, and he was assigned to hell. And I was one of the ones he was assigned to find information for. Enoch said to me, he said, okay, he's asking me to stop the changes of the clock. To be able to run the grids at Stonehenge to recode them to a D12. So they weren't about to let that happen once they broke the treaty. Now, I was right in the middle of a workshop when it happened, and I just felt the stuff ripping through me. I also felt they were going to try to use my fields once they hit them to hurt other people. So I got out of drilling. I said, we got to take a break. And I went out, and I remember I was dizzy and I was nauseous. It affected me physically. Sat down and said, what's going on? What is happening here? I had little attempts at psychic attack, but they could never get through. And Enoch explained to me, he said, something major is happening. We can't tell you here, it's not secured turf anymore. We can't even give you the download on why. He said, you have to cancel the workshops. And, there was a lot of people that had, they had paid the deposits, they were looking forward to it. They never came back. Most of the England people never even bothered coming back because they felt we insulted them by canceling them. They had no idea why they were canceled. I was told that it wasn't because they'd hurt me. I could, my fields could be repaired and I could fix that and with a little help. But those grid lines that those workshops were going to take place on were no longer safe. I couldn't have people opening their Kundalini on those grid lines or they would be infiltrated immediately. That's why the workshops were canceled. And we didn't find this out. We said, all right, we'll cancel. So we canceled the workshops. Micah made all the arrangements to get the money back to the people and everything. We got out of there fast. I said, go home. Get back to Sarasota where we have the secure grid lines, where we can explain. It's been a year's explanation, progressively releasing data. What I was told, first of all, was about the Treaty of Altair. I didn't know anything about the Treaty of Altair because I didn't know, they hadn't told me about the problems that were going down politically at that time, because it looked like they were going to be solved. They told me about the Treaty of Altair, July 5th. And they told me that on September 12th, that treaty was broken, but not only broken. What happened on September 7th, the Necromaton race, the group of men in black ones, they have bases in like the South Pole, and there's a lot of them in inner Earth, like in certain places of inner Earth. Inner Earth is not like heaven, okay? They are in the middle of war right now over this. The temple, they're attempting to attack the temples and take control of them by physical force, but they're not doing too good with that so far. But on September 7th, negotiations were offered by the Necromaton to both the Draconians and the Anunnaki, who hate each other, right? So it's like, you guys sit on that side, and we'll sit here, and we'll sit here, we're going to be mediators. Well, the Necromaton came up with a great idea. Even though we all despise each other, that's okay. Sometimes, even if we despise each other, if we cooperate just a little, we can accomplish something that benefits all of us. They put on the table an agreement. It was called the United Resistance, where they would join forces, use all of their collective ley lines and grid lines that they had control over, and they would make sure that they got control of the grids. Then they'd fight it out at the end and find out who got to keep it. They tried to make it so, okay, well, you guys will have control of this, and you guys will have control of this. We'll all figure this out. Like, good luck. They may get together and win, but then they're going to destroy each other trying to figure out who's going to keep control over it. They're notorious. Historically, all of these races would behave that way. But that caused some real big problems, because what they negotiated was they negotiated with the Draconians that were attacking the Anuellum in Density 3 in the Orion War. They stopped it. They got negotiations where, okay, we'll stop attacking you. Let's all focus on, getting this done down here. So the Orion Wars stopped. This was the only thing that had got the Anunnaki to go back into the Treaty of Altair, was we had offered to provide them protection so they wouldn't be attacked by the Drax anymore. All of a sudden, the Drax weren't going to attack them. Part of entering the United Resistance implied that they would have to all have a United Resistance agenda. They all shared the same agenda of wanting to get control of the halls of the Mente Stargates and the Crystal Pylon temples. Part of that agenda, for all of them, required extermination of the human race once they were used for opening grids, because they were too much of a threat. We've been a problem ever since we were created 560 million years ago, because we were the security team. So, pole shift was imminent. That was definitely what they planned to do. After they got the grids open, they could create the reversals on the temples in inner Earth. And then they would get rid of literally all humans. There was an ultimatum issued to the Emerald Covenant races. Said, we're big guys now. We got lots of forces, and we're all, even though we hate each other, going to help each other. You guys would have a choice. You can leave or leave. We will let you, if you go peacefully, we will evac out for you 50,000 of your indigo children. There are 500,000 of us here, indigo children. And the rest belong to us. We will do with them what we please, and we will not intervene. And this was issued to the founders. These are the Density 4 and Density 5 founders races, the collectives of consciousness out there. You don't do that to the founders. What do you think, they're going to buckle under blackmail? And I said, I don't think so. We told them to take it. What are we going to say? Yeah, fine, go take her. And of course, you'll get the halls of Mente Stargates and you'll take over the Time Makers. Oh dear, well, okay, at least we'll get 50,000 of our guys out. You're right. Talk about underestimating someone you're choosing to have as an adversary. Well, we told them no. And in response to that, we got the response we knew we would get. We wondered if they would actually go that far. There was an official edict of war issued by the United Resistance races, and these are from all over the different densities and different galaxies, to the founders. They will fight it out. That war is beginning on D4 already. It's a war of strategy right now. It's a war of covert manipulation right now. It's a war that depends on the 2003 dimensional blend experiment and the frequency fence going on. This is why wasn't in England. And we found out when we got back, because this is when they started to bring through the information, and it took our work in a totally different direction, where all of a sudden, yes, we were bringing the ascension trainings to and all that, all of a sudden, they're not going to matter much if everybody's gone, all right? If it goes into pole shift. So the agenda here became priorities first. The first priority was giving me the history that I could start giving to the people so they'd understand what we're in the middle of. And it's a history that's created the David and Goliath syndrome, because so many people, this is where I started, I was shown what the New Age movement really was. It was not started by the Guardian races. It was started by the races of the Luciferian Covenant, where they had progressively planned, ever since they made the Luciferian Covenant in 9060 BC, that they would, right before the stellar activation cycle was going to happen, and during it, they would make contact with the ones that were of their matrix, okay? This means the Illuminati, not the Illuminati, the souls that were Anunnaki and Draconian, that were in human bodies. Now, these were not bad people, okay? When we had things done to our DNA that totally erased all of our memory, the people that are Anunnaki souls and Draconian souls in human bodies had the privilege of being in a human body because they were doing a biogenesis program, because they had entered the Emerald Covenant to escape the control of their fallen matrices that they had incarnated out of. They were also strongly hated and resented by those matrices because they mutinied. They wanted to go back to the Christos agenda, and their matrices didn't want them to. Because to them, it's about numbers. It's about how many and how much frequency. It's about critical mass. So they had, once they did certain things that we'll talk about later, once they had done certain things to the DNA, where everybody's walking around not knowing who the heck they are anyway, for the last, literally 25,000 years, and they got really bad after 3,470 BC, they were going to make contact with the ones of their matrix, and they were going to play their little gods and their little channels and their little, hopefuls. They give them just enough technology, just enough microphone mechanics to make sure they run their codes into the grids nice and strong on the reverse matrix. The New Age movement was set up to get the people who had been entrapped by Luciferian races to run and finish their dirty work for them. Some of them became aware of some of what was going on. They were promised immunity. They wouldn't be hurt. They're the chosen ones. They'll be saved. They'll be evac off the planet. It's the great cleansing coming. Well, the last great cleansing took place in right after the Atlantean flood of 9558 BC. That's when they erased everything, so we have no record unless they wanted us to have it as far as what the history was. It also meant the decimation of lots of races. This was the great cleansing they had in mind. That cleansing that they talk about in the New Age movement, the cleansing they had in mind was getting rid of the humans on the planet, including their own hybrids, because they weren't going to choose their hybrids. Their hybrids had betrayed them and tried to go into the Christos. So they were just using them as well. Right now you have a bunch of people, a lot of them, in the New Age movement that are channeling, are actually Anunnaki or Drac souls. They don't know that. I mean, here you can't, we don't know, so we look into our DNA template and how the heck do we do that, right? You can't tell. It doesn't matter if you are a Drac or an Anunnaki soul, because you were a good guy. If you're in a human form and you were a Drac or an Anunnaki soul, you started out as a good guy that was trying to get your coding back and get away from those who are controlling you. What is going on now is you have a bunch of these people that are channeling who they think are their family. And it's real important if a person has real strong codes, or they have a particular political position, or a particular way they can be used to interact with groups of people. They'll do something that they call walk-in. Now, there is something called walking in. Walking in is an agreement that souls make between themselves within their own soul matrix, that they can share an incarnation if one doesn't want to stay the whole time. Instead of dying in the body, have the other one take over the other half. I'm a walk-in. Every individual is a walk-in, just so you know. It's part of the natural process of getting a large amount of consciousness into a very small body. You have a smaller part of your own 1728 cells. Run the first half, do fetal integration, and raise it till about age 12, and then you have the transfer take place where that one ascends, and the rest of you comes in, so the body can hold. Now that's a normal walk-in. That's a legitimate walk-in. That is an Emerald Covenant walk-in, and they're done frequently, especially during stellar activation cycles, because that's when you need all of the big consciousnesses stuffed in little bodies to run the grids. Well, what the Anunnaki and Dracs are doing to the people that they, open contact with their people. They're walking in there, right? They're stealing their bodies snatching, if it's worth it. Which means they push out the consciousness. They literally displace the frequencies of the consciousness that started the body. And they get stuck in the dimensional field like a ghost without a body while they take over. And they pretend they're the same person, but they have an agenda now. I could name a whole bunch, but I won't. You could really pick up just about any New Age brochure, at least in the States. I don't know how it is over here. And out of 20 speakers, you'll have about anywhere from 11 to 14 of them are them. It's really funny. These are the people, when they meet me, they immediately don't like me. Because I see them. I smile at them, they smell me. There's a growl that's happening behind them. Because they know I recognize them. Some of them, it's like they're such old-time adversaries. Oh, hello, you're good. This is the stuff that's going on here. The Anunnaki channels, especially, are the ones that are being given the almost nauseatingly sweet, light, love, and clueless stuff from the New Age movement. Oh, here's a little mechanics here. And oh, you are lovely. We love you so much. We're your family coming back to greet you. Oh, and yes, the landings will be soon. And you're our chosen ones. La-di-da-di-da. Oy. This stuff, what's so hurtful about it is it takes so much of truth, of the true teachings, and then just adds a little twist. So you feel, hey, this feels good. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that works. And then you miss the twist. And it's the twist that nails you. It's bad enough to take an anti-Christo stance and say, we're not going to do that. That's what the Dracs do. The Dracs are like bullies, right? You know the concept of brains versus brawn? Well, you have the Dracs who tend to just act like bullies. We come in, we take over, we stomp on you. Not a lot of talk. The Anunnaki, they have that 11th strand capacity. Okay, the reverse 11. They have more of a sneaky approach. They make you their best friend, and then they get you from behind. And you don't even realize they got you until you're gone. This is what's happening in the New Age movement. And I don't like to be the person that has to point this out. But if I don't, who's going to? If everyone the Guardians are trying to contact to tell them stuff like this, and there are others they're trying to contact. If everybody says, oh, I don't want that job, nobody's going to like me. They're going to get mad at me in the New Age movement, and they're going to launch hate campaigns and stuff. I don't want to do that. Am I going to do this? Would you do this? If you were aware and you knew beyond any doubt, and you knew from personal experience and personal memory, that what you were being shown was true, would you be able to live with yourself, particularly knowing that you're an eternal consciousness and you can't escape it by dying? Would you be able to live with yourself peacefully by saying, this is too big a job for me, I can't deal with it because people will be upset with me and it's going to make me uncomfortable? Or would you just tell anybody who listens? I'm here telling people. Not because I want to tell them, it's not because I want this to be my message. I'm not happy about any of this. This isn't, in fact, what I really commissioned for. It was looking, when I agreed to this job, before I came in, it looked like things were going to go smooth. It looked like the Anunnaki might just, for once, own up to the promises that they made. It didn't go that way, and I got stuck as like, oh dear, I'm in the middle of a combat zone. I didn't commission for that, oh no. But you knew it was a possibility, yes, I did. Okay, but it was when I was trying to ignore. Alright? Well, we're in the middle of this mess. The mess is fascinating, morbidly fascinating, as to what they've done. They've reversed Merkaba on the planet. And they did this this is the normal stuff up here, how the normal alignments of electromagnetics is supposed to work. What they did it first on parallel. They reversed a portion of the antiparticle solar spiral, just a portion. They only have access to the three-dimensional levels of it, not its full 12-dimensional spectrum. But they reversed enough of it. By doing this, they harnessed a piece of what was the planet Malthar. Is a planet-sized piece. It's actually, I think, even that one is bigger than Earth. So Malthar was big compared to the size of Earth. They took the fragment of it that's a bit larger than Earth is, and it's not quite as large, it's almost the same size as Nibiru. There's a nice balance there, because you could create an orbital balance if you could lock them together. Now, Nibiru was still in that position. They used the portion of the solar stargate that they had control of. They created this other planet and forced it electromagnetically with photosonic technology. They forced it into a direct orbit with Nibiru, and then they reversed that orbit. They created a reversal of the Merkaba of Nibiru. What this did to Nibiru was create this. It moved it from its normal orbital plane here. It literally, talk about pole shift. This place went through Hades when they did this. Everything and everybody, including all the Anunnaki races that were trying to bioregenerate, our guys were running Nibiru at the time. Not running it, the Nibiruan people, the Anunnaki was still theirs, but it was the Emerald Covenant Anunnaki who had control of it. They were taken over during this whole process. They were all wiped out, and so were our guys that were there trying to help them. They forced Nibiru into this orbit. You couldn't do that unless you had it counterbalanced perfectly with the electromagnetics. That's where that lovely little battle star came in. It kept the polarity balances perfectly, the electromagnetics, and it depended on having control of that portion of the solar stargate because it runs through that. What that did was reverse the polarity of Nibiru in parallel. It went from in parallel. It's supposed to be electrical. It turned it magnetic there. Now, when you do something here, it affects something here. But there has to be a direct link. So first of all, they reversed Nibiru. Then, they used the same, this is a frequency being transmitted, okay? This thing transmits, and so does Nibiru. There's transmitters on both of those that create photosonic standing waves. Okay, it's very specifically calibrated frequencies, interdimensional frequency waves. They project them through the solar gate. They have one hooking onto Nibiru. They projected another one into parallel Earth, and they anchored it with on the site on parallel Earth that corresponds to what Stonehenge here. That's where they did the first anchor. It was a set of pylons, just like the pylon technology that the guys are using in Earth. They weren't quite as big, but they were Nibiruan selenite crystal rods. It's selenite crystal that they use most of the time. Sometimes quartz, mostly selenite, because it works better with photosonics. They anchored these transmissions coming down from the battle star and transmissions coming down from Nibiru in to alter the frequencies here, to block certain frequencies in Earth's shields, and then to reverse them, just like they had done to Nibiru. They plugged Earth's Merkaba, or parallel Earth's Merkaba, into parallel Nibiru's Merkaba on the reverse thing, which broke the natural link between Earth's fields and the solar fields. So the only way to get to Earth from Solar Stargate 4 was by passing through Nibiru. Except there were certain ways you could get to Earth that had to do with Gate 6. These are called the Halls of Amareya. It was an old passage that was used to seed the second seeding of this race that had been wiped out. The passage was reopened by the Guardians after this mess took place. These, at least you could get some souls. If they were coming from the higher dimensional field, you could get them to come through those passages where they didn't have to pass through the lower gates. That's how the Magis were incarnate here. They could come in from the higher levels through that one particular side of the gates that weren't completely reversed. Now, this happened over on parallel, and right at the same time what was being done on Earth was there was a frequency, a beam, that photosonic wave, and look at this as a wave of energy that bends, was sent through, it was twisted, its angular rotation of particle spin was twisted to match that of the particle universe, and then it was anchored on our Earth in the area of Stonehenge. It was also, you have Nibiru here, parallel, you have parallel Nibiru over there, you have regular Nibiru here, and you have also over here, that same reversal, because they couldn't do a reversal on one. You have to take both of them or neither of them will go. When they reversed Nibiru over there, they also did it here and created that false elliptical orbit that goes between, that orbit actually goes up in the density 2 up to Sirius A, and then comes back down in between Jupiter and Mars, I believe it is, where the asteroid belt is here. So they did the same thing over in the particle universe. And they, right through the solar gates, the part of it they control, and through Wormwood, they make the transmissions that link Nibiru and Earth to the reverse Merkaba. So you have the same thing going on. The angles are a little different, but you have the same thing going on here. What allows this to anchor into this, to keep the whole thing set up, is this wave form. Okay, it's a standing sonic wave that is anchored at Nibiru. Not Nibiru, at Stonehenge. But it's not just at Stonehenge. I'm going to show you some other graphs here. Let me see which one first. These guys. First of all, I'll show you this one. Okay. The center of this little starburst is, now it's a small map. You'll notice this is England up under all the mess, right? You have Stonehenge up there, and you also have Gate 11. Okay, remember, Quayside 11 is in Ireland. Gate 11 is in the Vale of Pusey here in England. They anchored that beam that was coming over on the graph that was coming over in parallel at Stonehenge and run it through Gate 11 and then transmit. Now, how they anchor all these transmissions, there are 24 primary, what they call crystal temple bases. Those things that were found, those pictures over here. Now, you don't have to worry about looking at these. Yes, they do transmit, but these are blocked. So all you're going to get is a bounce back to B12 frequency. These aren't going to hurt you. Okay? These guys are small. These are like the satellite connection rods. There's big ones of these that haven't been discovered yet. There's big ones that are in all of these locations across the globe. Okay? And these locations are Hawaii, which we just took out when we were there on the trip. We neutralized that one and recoded it, so now it's carrying crystals frequency. Vale of Pusey, England at Gate 2. Iran at Gate 3. Pakistan is one of the control bases. It's not at a gate, it runs on the line between gates. So it's a control base that can control several of them at once. Bermuda, Gate 5. Number 5. These aren't gate numbers, I'm sorry. These are just the numbers of the temples up here. Okay, so Hawaii, Vale of Pusey, Iran. Pakistan is a control one. It's not on Stargate. The others are on Stargates. Bermuda, Florida, the Gruoff Point, which we took back half of, and it's still running well. That's what we do. See, we were doing this job and we didn't even realize it on January 1st, 2000, when we did the energy work down at the Gruoff Point in Sarasota, Florida. We reclaimed and recoded back to the 12 code a good portion of this particular crystal network that they're using there. Machu Picchu, Peru, they have one base set up. They have another control base in Portugal. They have one at Titicaca, Peru. They have one in Giza, Egypt. That's a big one, a pretty popular one. They have one in the South Pole. They have another control base, I have a hard time pronouncing this, Mauritania, West Africa is another control base. Paxloy, Greece is another one. Central Mexico, which is very close, and that's what these are connected to. Okay? There's a bigger crystal network that's in central Mexico. That means in Chihuahua, Mexico, are kind of like satellite bases up. Okay? Cyprus Island in the Mediterranean, Easter Island in the Pacific, Rome, Italy, and that's a big popular one too. Johannesburg, South Africa. Guess where, Rome? Take one guess. You got it. That's the main center of it. Now these bases are hundreds, some of them are hundreds of miles. They're not just little tiny crystals. Some of them are literally hundreds of miles of crystal bed that were implanted specifically to hold the reverse frequency. Another one in Brazil. There's another control base in Brazil. There's one in Tibet. There's one in China, central China, Zion in the East. And then Hamadan, Iran is another control base. And then there's one in Iraq, and the big one is in Bosnia. Yes. You know the Bosnian war stuff that's kicked up over the last several years? That was an experiment of running psychotronic technology through that particular base to see if you could stimulate a group of people to fight with each other, to play on the emotional body, to see if you could do agitation frequencies, see how well they work. Well, it worked really well in Bosnia. What's interesting is in the last 8 months, they have released another pulse like that in the United States, in China, and in the Middle East, right within a few months of each other. Now, these pulses don't immediately make everybody go crazy and decide to do war. They build in degrees. And what they do is amplify the distortions in the emotional body and amplify the distortions in the mental body. Fatiguing, making things more aggravating. If you happen to not like your neighbor, all of a sudden you really don't like your neighbor. This is the stuff that they're programming in. Because they have a vested interest in creating turmoil and creating to the point where it looks like world war. Because then we'll be ready for our saviors to come and prevent us from killing ourselves. Then they'll come in on their spaceships and Jesus and Moses and a few other very popular people of all religions will be with them. This is the plan that they're running. This is why they're pumping the Jesus, Mary, and Joseph stuff. Well, they're getting everybody to see images of Mary speaking to them, telling them of the horrible things to come. But as long as you say these prayers, affirmations, mathematical codings, you will be spared. The scam that's being run with this, it leaves me speechless for once. I mean, to describe what that feels like to me, when the awe kind of wore off, it went from awe, which is like, can't respond, you know, I totally neutralize my emotional body, I can't respond, to just, oh, how could they do this? Oh my God, all this stuff. And I'm going to spend years trying to say, okay, well, Buddhist teachings, oh, these are good things, you know, and pouring through some certain books to see, and it feels like, okay, that's good, that sounds great, oh yeah, that's good stuff. Well, I feel funny about that, I don't know why, it must be me, you know, where certain parts were great, you could really relate to, and other things in some of the stuff, there'd be a funniness. But you wouldn't know what the funniness was, and you kind of figured, oh, well, the people who are into this must really understand it. It must be just, I'm just not that spiritually awakened yet, but I guess if I stick with it, I'll get there. Now, you could feel the disharmony sometimes in some of the programs and some of the writings and the teachings, but you weren't able to identify what the heck it was. So you'd be seduced with the good stuff. And this is the Anunnaki thing. The Dracs kind of learned a little of it off the Anunnaki, but they're still not very good about it. The Dracs have control problems where they really kind of, you just can't help it. They just have to let you know that they're going to control it. They just have to make it, give your power over and not trick you into thinking you're not. They just go for it. The Anunnaki just soothsay you and they pat you on the ego and they say, oh, you're 12th strain activated now. Isn't that wonderful? Excuse me. Why can't I do anything different than I did 6 weeks ago? Oh, it will come. It will come when the grid's activated. Okay. This is why people don't want to look at the activation programs that require you to do something. All right? They say, do these few chants, come and do group Merkabas with us without putting up your Maharic shield. They don't teach the Maharic shield. Why? Because you can't run a reverse Merkaba on a Maharic shield. It will reset it back to its normal spin. So they're teaching about 80% good metaphysical stuff, and 20% lie, and all of it without the Maharic seal, so you don't run D12 frequency. And now that the word about D12 frequency is getting out there, and people aren't falling for the fact that D5 is Christ consciousness. That used to be the big thing. Once you'll go to D5 and you're ascended master and reach Christ consciousness. It seems we've done enough damage to the program in the last 2 years that somehow it's been getting around the internet and stuff. It's D12 is Christ consciousness, not D5. Oh, really? So now they have to match it. Now all of a sudden, yes, you have to reach D12. Now they're really into the 12-strand activation programs. They're lying. They're trying to get you to activate your strands on an 11 reverse matrix. So you drop the reverse codes. The scam is amazing. The scope of the scam is amazing. You've got to give these guys credit for one thing. They're smart. They're intelligent. They have no heart at all. You know, as far as compassion or decency or just common courtesy or any of the things that tend to be quite human characteristics. I can't imagine myself, even in an Anunnaki form, but fortunately I've never been in a pure Anunnaki form and I don't ever want to try with its reverse matrices. If it could really cause that level of sickness, where you could do something like this to a race and be a part of it, and still feel fine and feel justified, yes.
Question, can you point out the nibiruian 8-pointed star?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wait a minute. Okay. See this configuration here?
Yes.
This is the basic configuration that gets formed with the dotted lines here. But because the thing is up on top to explain it, you don't get to see this top point. Okay? It just goes up. It's basically kind of almost comes around, back around to the south pole. But it creates this grid. This 8-pointed star grid. That's why if you look at the Roman stuff, you can see the 8-pointed star stuff all over. This was the mark of Nibiruian takeover, right? Yeah. If you go back through, even into the Sumerian things, there was a lot of the 8-pointed star stuff happening there. You can see their infiltration of cultures by the symbols that were used by the cultures. In fact, part of it still stays in it. There's so much in this new book that's coming. We got into showing where in the different cultures, the ones that were worshipped dragons or had as their power animals or their totems, or the crocodile people that did worship the crocodile gods. What do you think these guys were worshiping? I mean, the crocodile guys were associated with the drag groups, And the Anunnaki ones, they had two primary symbols. One was the eight-pointed star, and the favorite one, which represented an agenda that combined both Jehovian Anunnaki and Anu-Seraphim, which are the half-drac, half-Anunnaki. Usually they don't like each other, because the Jehovians are like, we're pure Anunnaki, and you're part-drac, we don't like you. There was a group of them that united. These are the ones that did the Luciferian covenant. They have a special sign of their own. It's the sign of the cross. Not the cross that goes this way. The cross that goes this way. This is the balanced cross. Native Americans used to use that one. The natural, where they're perfectly even, perfectly balanced. It's the sign of this cross that they use. The sign of the crucifixion cross that they use. So, this is the Anunnaki groups that formed a united Anunnaki, where they took Jehovian Anunnaki, which are from Sirius A, their pure strength from the Anu Elohim, combined them with Anu-Seraphim Anunnaki, which are the nibiruians and a bunch of other ones that are part drac or part reptilian. Okay, they took them, mixed them together to form a super race. Their idea was to form a super race here, and they have. There's a super race that walks among us that they're waiting to activate to fulfill their agendas. That gets into other stuff where they took over progressively, getting the codes from each of the races by taking over the 12 tribes. That we'll get into a little bit later. I show you the history. There's a series of events that when you see, you just look at the list and go, oh my God, all of that in the last 25,000 years? Oh my God, and we don't think they exist. We don't think eagles are real. Yo, they've been here just as much as we've been here. So I'll show you that list in a minute. But this is the transmission pattern. Now this becomes a little bit more significant when you see the next map. Let's change this one. We'll put this one up, and I'll try putting them over.
What's the significance of the crop circles, which are actually...
We'll get to the crop circles. The crop circle is the first manifest expression of the war that's going on in D4 and higher. It's called the crop circle wars, because they put one in to control gate 11, and we put one in to put it back to a 12, and they put one in to code it, and we put one in to code it. So it's back and forth and back and forth. That's why you have to be careful with those crop circles. You never know which one is transmitting what. Keep that in mind. If you ever go to explore them, put up your heart, seal, and you'll be fine. Because at this point, we've taken over some of theirs and recoded them. They've taken over some of ours and blocked something to make it work like theirs. You can't tell. We could give you a list of the ones we put there, and then they're all, they recode them so fast, and then we have to put in new ones. It's been ridiculous what's going on. It used to be that the crop circle wars were just taking place between the Dracs and the Anunnaki, each trying to get control of the gate 11 grids, because the gate 11 grids is where everything runs off of. Now here, I want to show you something. These lines here, these are the axiotonal lines, the verticals that run through the planet. You will see other maps of these that show 12 of them splayed out like this. They do not run like that. Some of them are blended together and form one major power line. There's a couple of those. Now, there's certain, let's say, Enochian information out there that was given before 1983 when they entered the Emerald Covenant that shows a bit different scenario of the ley lines or the axiotonal lines and how they're placed. And I guess if you want to plug into the Nibiruian crystal grid, that would probably be the map you want to use. But this one is showing you where the actual planetary natural ley lines and axiotonal lines are going. There's lots more, but these are the primary feed lines. Okay? They come off of each of the gates. Okay? Now, one gate, like this, okay, those circles the gate. Each gate transmits a primary 6-point. It actually does 12, but these are the most powerful lines, so I only showed them because it would have been a mess if I tried to put all 12 of them on. So you have a circle that represents a gate, and in that you have a 6-axis where there's one vertical that creates an axiotonal, and then there's the crossovers that create the diagonals. Then there's one that actually corresponds to the other set of 6 that would form 12. There's another power line. I have that one marked in the dotted line. That creates the line going out this way. If you take each circle, and this is how I do this, take each circle, put that configuration in it, and then draw each of the lines out from each location of where those stargates are. This is the line configuration that you get. They are the actual placements of the stargates on the planet. These are the actual layouts of the lines. Now what becomes interesting, and this is why this particular thing is called the checkerboard matrix, because it makes the planetary grids look like a checkerboard, with the white ones turned on and the dark ones turned off or reversed. Let me put that one on top. That should go pretty good over it. Yeah, are they lined up over there? Somewhere there should be easy. Yeah, if you line these two up on the bottom, that should help. Because they were drawn and I traced them through, so they would. Yeah, let me see if I can do something.
Hold it together.
Is it going in the right direction? Yeah. You see, technically, we shouldn't have any. Let me see if I can do it. It might be easier to take it off like this with it and put it back on. Yeah, try that. It's worth trying to see. I haven't had time to study this yet. This just came through. It ought to be real interesting to see what lines they're blocking and how. And this forms a checkerboard. For each of these lines, create a reversal in the things they go through. So some of the lines are more reversed than others. Some aren't. This is more complex than this. There's very specific frequency codes being sent off on each one of those. They're not all the same codes. So it turns some on. So if you look at the planetary shields, like a disc of light bulbs, it turns some of them on, some of them off. And if you look at those light bulbs configurations on and off in the distance, it literally looks like a checkerboard, where some of them are off, some of them are on. And the mathematics that they're using in these transmissions makes it look like what you would see with a chess or a checkerboard. There's an interesting thing coming out of some of the Thoth teachings, because they're hanging themselves here. They let a little bit too much slide with their loose lip sync ships. They're going to sink their own ship when this gets out, for anybody with a brain, because they have a society going. It's run through, I believe, the Paracletes. They have a society that's talking about the joys and wonders of the Christos race that they're creating, the joys and wonders of the Christos mission, and the wonderful checkerboard matrix and its temples. Well, this is the wonderful checkerboard matrix. And those are the temples we're talking about. And I guess, if you happen to be running an anti-Christos agenda, they're wonderful. But if you happen to be running a Christos agenda and care about freedom and care about what the founders care about, which is being able to sustain life here in a joyful, cohabitative, loving way, this is not what you want to play with. But what this has done to the planetary grids is precisely what it has done to our DNA. Every chromosome in our body has been cut in 2/3 by it. One could completely shut off, and the other 2/3 half shut off. At some point there's going to be diagrams to show you what that looks like and how this does that to it. This physically mutated the form of our bodies. This has been going on since 25,500 BC. And there are 2 stages. First, it mutated us down where it couldn't activate above 8 strands. Their master race is the 8-strand reverse hybrids that they plan to run the planet, or they did in the beginning, until they got a little too feisty and decided they wanted to do the Emerald Covenant, and then they were on the hit list too. In 3470 BC, our buddies, the Galactic Federation, had a brilliant idea. They were having such a problem controlling the hybrid races who wanted to enter the Emerald Covenant. There was too much knowledge, thanks to the rare line Magis coming out, about they're doing this. They're hurting you. They're not helping you. When the hybrid races that had been cooperating with some of the Anunnaki races that were doing this started to realize, they started to hear enough through the grapevine, and there was enough proof at the time to make them realize, oh my God, they're going to exterminate us too. Yeah, that's the plan. Once they got that, all of a sudden they were all very eager to enter the Emerald Covenant. Right? We don't want you anymore. You're going to try to kill us. We're not going to help you take over. So there was a big rebellion that was going on. And if they didn't have enough of their little foot soldiers here, they weren't going to be able to get control of the cultures of the 12-tribe humans, which they needed to do if they were going to create a race that had enough of the coding to still run the Templar. Because they could get it on reverse, but they needed the Templar codings to Earth, the specific geometrical scalar waveforms. So it wouldn't be enough to just reverse the matrix. If they had to have a body that had human coding in it, then reverse that coding, or they could not run the grids. So they had a master race agenda, and all of a sudden, the ones they were going to use for their master race abandoned ship. So the Galactic Federation, you know, the ones that are writing books these days, to certain people, it's not their fault that they're putting out the information because they don't realize what they're dealing with. It's not the author's fault. He doesn't consciously know, but if he doesn't watch it, he's not going to be who he thinks he is for very long. You know, some certain people are great for body snatch. You know, when you get to be in a prominent position promoting one of their agendas, you're in danger of living in your body for too long. Anyway, Galactic Federation decided to add certain things to this checkerboard matrix. And before, when it had cut everything up into eighths, they cut it up further into quarters. At this point, what it did was mutate the form down to a 4-strand, or like actually the 2-strand we identified, which is called a base 4 genetic alphabet. Now this gets into some complicated stuff that has to do with nucleotide bases, which are basically the chemical elements that scientists use to identify or to categorize and analyze the DNA to determine what the size of the gene is and what the how many chromosomes, you know, a type of life form has in the DNA. What's going to amaze science is to find that right now everything on the planet appears to have a base 4 genetic alphabet. That means there's 4 basic chemicals, and I know that if I can remember them again. Adenine, the C one I can never remember. What is that, the C one? That's it, yeah. I know them by the letters, but I you know, all right. Yes, those 4 bases, everything seems to appear, everybody's DNA and animal DNA and plant DNA seems to appear to hold this as the base pattern, so everything supposedly has a base 4 genetic alphabet. This isn't true, but it's an illusion that's created because of this. What is the truth about genetic alphabets that's going to totally blow out of the water once it really comes out and certain things happen that's going to show that the way the people that are doing like the Genome Project, trying to map the human genome, they're getting false results because they don't know what they're seeing. They're identifying the mutation as if it were the reality. Within the mutation, they can get a lot of information. Yes, you can tell if, you know, whose person's DNA was this, you can tell if they're related to each other. But you will never be able to tell the true relationships between interspecies. This is why they can very easily come in and say that we were evolved from primates and they did it. This is part of the plan. What was really the reality before this mess was put into our grids was called a variable-based genetic alphabet. That meant different life forms had different chemical compositions. It depended upon how many what are called vector codes were in the DNA template. A full 12-strand DNA template holds 12 vector codes. Okay? If you shut off 4 of those and you have 8 left, you get a base 8. You will have 8 different chemicals manifesting as the base, to form the base pairs in the DNA chains. If you cut off everything but 4, you get a base 4. And if you do it on a planetary level through the grids, it affects every species on the planet. Before, you didn't have weird little oddities, like cherry trees having almost 4 times as many chromosomes as a human. That makes a lot of sense. And it was even surprising, I think, to the scientists, because they would assume that more complex life forms would have more chromosome content and larger genes. But right now, if you look at some of the gene charts, they're really funny. Crayfish have more chromosome count than humans do. So do chimpanzees. And we're very close. We appear to be very close to the chimpanzee genome. Well, if they turn the rest of the codes back on, science wouldn't know what the heck to do with itself first. These things would be mutating back into the normal form before their eyes. Except it doesn't happen just like that. It happens generationally, as it purges. Now, if you're working with your DNA consciously, and this gets lifted, it will happen quickly. You'll have growth spurts, probably starting first with like your fetal growth, and your height will start to change. Which they tell us, once it gets fixed, it doesn't move anymore. Well, it does if you activate DNA. This is the stuff. I can remember when this was coming. Oh, Lord, you really want to get me killed fast, don't you? When we start to release this stuff, and I just, like, basically, I haven't analyzed, you know, the DNA and used it in their language and stuff. They've given me enough, talking in the language, the chemicals, to explain how this could be just as much as what you guys are saying. And it would also solve your little problem about the fact that things that are obviously less complex life forms have more chromosome counts. There's a reason for this. It also will reveal something, and this is the big something the Anunnaki do not want revealed, It is the fact that right now, when you suppress certain portions of the templates, you can justify the story of primate evolution. They can come in here and say, oh yes, life forms on this planet were just at the primate stage, and then we came and did a genetic enhancement, and then they will prove and give us the DNA evidence that our DNA and their DNA look the same. Why can they do that? Because they are using their hybrids that had strands of our DNA spliced into it in order to give them the ability to regenerate. So we do have similarities, not because we came from them, but because they had a hybridization program going with us. And they were going to tell us that isn't it nice of them to have evolved us from those little apes? If it wasn't for them, we'd still be apes. The ape connection comes from the Anunnaki themselves. The ones who did this, their body forms originally were called aquatic apes. That means they're land or water apes. They were an ape hominid form. They were big hairy apes like the apes we have here. They were more hominid in form, but they were a definite ape-like genome. If this grid goes down, and I wish it would be instant to blow everybody's mind, everybody starts changing shape right before your eyes, everybody starts shape-shifting, you know? Which I'm wondering how fast it goes. They haven't told me. They said, it doesn't happen overnight. I said, what, about 500 years we'll all go back to normal? No, it didn't take quite that long either. There was almost a, what, in there? Where I was there, what? What are you not telling me yet? Because I can't really see it. What? If it comes to the point where I find out that it only takes 2 weeks, prepare yourself, you're going to morph, I'll let you know. Believe me, I'll be the first one to be surprised. Wow, that fast. This is when it would get very, very strange. Because the people who are Anunnaki souls in human bodies, they don't have the same genome. If you let the other things that are being repressed in the DNA template turn back on, the chemicals will change, and in the chemical DNA, they will start to see differences between people that look like people, the same people. On the outside, they will find that the human race is not the same species, that there are 3 different species of being in human bodies that all appear to be of the same human genome right now, because the parts where the differences show are turned off. When these start to turn back on, humans, the human infant, is going to grow taller. It's going to grow taller and thinner, and the facial features are going to get more childlike. Because that's what the original humans looked like. They had like these eternal, sweet little kid-type faces. And they also originally, and this is going to take a while before that regenerates, but they had 6 fingers and 6 toes. That was the human imprint. There was a base 12 body pattern. The Anunnaki were more ape-like. Their stature was different. And you can still see some of these body differences in what we call common human. They had more stocky builds and more when their full template was showing, they had a bit more of a hunch. They could be tall. They could go up to like an 8-strand activation, some of them that were in the bioregenesis program. But they had more coarse facial features, like harder-lined facial features, and like larger foreheads and flatter heads. Oh, I forgot a little characteristic about the humans. They had pointed heads. Not pointed, but the elongated skulls. And it's really interesting that the few of them that I've actually found, I think they're looking to find in Peru or Brazil or someplace, they've actually found archaeologically these elongated skulls. And the big story of how that happened was either they had encephalitis when they were infants because they were small children's skulls, or they must have been one of those tribes that like squeezed their heads and like wrapped them to make them a different shape. You're right. The one little bit of evidence they forgot, that their photosonic stuff didn't vaporize. And they're going to say, oh yeah, that was like a distortion because they had encephalitis and their brains grew too big and swelled. And come on. They've been doing this with evidence for thousands of years, if they forgot a piece. But most of what they do is collect it and get rid of it. So there's no evidence there to support anything except the line of bull they're trying to see this as our history. And that's really what it comes down to. Yes, where is it? That's what I think I'll get home.
Sorry. I don't understand what the superposition of those two that Charles tells us.
What this tells you, now these, from the graph behind, these are the axiotonal lines that run through Earth's grids. They carry the main frequencies that come down through the stargates. They carry the main frequencies that feed energy from the density 1 system into the planetary grids. It's a circulatory system, just like we have lines, vertical lines called axiotonals that run through the body to circulate the Kundalini and the Maharada and the Kirishé energies. Well, the planet does too, right? It processes these lines are the main feed lines that'll come in through the gates, through the planetary shields, into the gate openings, and then it will start to transmit that frequency out. It's how the planet gets its life force, and it's what creates the electromagnetic force on any planet. This is how electricity and its magnetic effect are created. It goes into the different polarizing, the different particle and antiparticle beams that are coming out on the natural grids. These lines, the small ones under here, are the natural axiotonal lines, the main feed lines on Earth's grids. The little horizontal ones with dots going across are ley lines, the main ley line feed lines. That's the natural circulatory system of energy in the planetary grids. Now, this thing, this mess, is the Anunnaki transmission line pattern that's coming out through Stonehenge. It's crossing over all of those grids, breaking them up. And what it's doing when it's crossing the grids is it's sending very specific reversed pulses, which means it's taking the frequency and reversing its polarity. So they're creating polarity reversals in very specific portions of the ley lines on the planet, which is holding that reversal, the Merkaba reversal, into the planetary grids. And it's also holding the genetic distortion into the human, and not just the human body, into every species on this planet. It's not only humans that have been held hostage here, it's the whole darn planet and every life form on it. And that's absolutely disgusting in my book. I mean, pardon me for being opinionated, but when I saw this and they showed it, I was like, oh, how could you? I mean, I think of bunny rabbits. I like bunny rabbits. I mean, but plants, what did they do to you? You know what I mean? They've mutated the evolution of every form of consciousness on this planet, and they've held it trapped in time. Because with the grids this way, all the planet can do is continue to cycle in its density one time band. It can't build enough frequency to do particle-antiparticle fusion with its parallel to take it up into density 2 into its next set of natural time cycles. They've held the planet hostage, and they've done it to Nibiru as well.
So then, using the graphs, how will the work that we're about to do alter the graphs, alter the charts?
Well, what we're progressively doing is each of these bases, each of these little triangles are one of their bases. Okay, if we can take one of them off. Let's leave one of the little lines on. Yeah. Okay, now those bases on there are in the same place as the bases we're on the other round. All of these are the primary anchoring rods for the transmissions that are coming from Stonehenge. Progressively, the trips that we're doing, I haven't compared them yet, I hadn't had time to pull that one graph that shows where we're going and when, but it is in those sheets that from Nicole, and they explain that each trip we go on between now and the end of 2002, we are systematically, first, what we're doing here in Ireland and England is we're going to Ireland to activate something very, very ancient, very, very sacred, and very, very important. It's going to give enough power to the grids combined with what we opened in Kauai in May. We're going to create this force of energy here, then we're going to go to Stonehenge. Now Stonehenge is the area where, not Stonehenge, we're going to outside of Stonehenge where the gate is. Stonehenge is where the blockage is. That's where that little wormwood creep that's up in the sky anchors into our grids. This is what we're supposed to do when we came to England the last time, but they got us in the meantime. Now, we're going to go from Ireland and activate and build the power source here with what we're doing here. Then we're going to go to gate 11 that goes with Q site 11 that is in Ireland. And we are going to pull frequency through the round table there from Q site 11 to gate 11. I explained before that Q site 11 would be here, gate 11 here, and there's a line of frequency transmission that goes between them. And right in the center of that line is Stonehenge. Well, we're going to build this major D12 charge here, and we're going to pull it from here, and we're going to recode the Nibiruian crystal grid. This is going to cause some problems, especially for the battlestar. It's going to be like a slingshot, and there's a lot of efforts being made to make sure it's not a slingshot that lands in our lap. Now, if this was something just being done by Guardians on Earth, good luck, because you couldn't do it just from here. Once that's released, if there wasn't something else being done, once you release Earth from that magnetic hold, it would naturally flip back and roll back to its natural Mercury position, which means it would go into pole shift. What's going to prevent this from happening is we open something in Kauai called the Halls of Amaria Passage. That is a series of Stargate openings that can come down into the Earth that used Stargate 6, Stargate 9, and Stargate 12. And that's the strongest anchor you can get, because it's anchored in Stargate 12, which is Lyra Aramatana in density 4. Once they're opened, which we managed to get open doing roundtables in Kauai, that's why we're needed. We can get the things open here. They can open, the Guardian races can open them in the higher spaces, but only humans have the codes that can open the gates down here. That's how we were built. We were built as part of the Guardian teams. We open the receptors in the planetary grids to allow the anchoring of this frequency. What we did, now Stargate 6 was normally open in a stellar activation cycle, but it wasn't due, I think, to 2008 was when it was due for its natural opening cycle. If this stuff wasn't taken care of before 2003, we were going in a shift and it couldn't be stopped. So, they've opened Stargate 6 early. 8 years early, well, almost 8 years early. 7 years early. Now, this is why I talked about yesterday how the grids are amping right now. Much faster than they normally would have to. It was a last-ditch attempt to stop this. The Treaty of Altair was the hope that we had of stopping it. The Guardians are not happy about having to open Gate 6 early, because it's going to run 6-dimensional frequency through here before anybody even has their 4th strands activated. There's certain things being done to protect people from getting instantly ill from the frequencies that are going to be coming through very fast. Part of that is the indigos. If we can get our codes activating and on the right Mercury spin fast enough, we'll do critical mass effect for the race template. And we will be able to protect the people by helping their DNA to sustain enough frequency. Whereas these frequencies come through between now and 2003 and beyond, it's literally accelerated the whole cell activation cycle. What it has done, they didn't open Gate 6. Earth will roll as soon as we broke the connection. But Gate 6 has enough power to hold everything below it in alignment to its Merkaba fields. So what's going to happen is the solar stargate on D4, the palladium stargate on Alcyon D5, and solar stargate 6 are going to create a split of energy. It's a very strong one. The Earth's field is going to be immediately plugged into as soon as it's released. That will allow it, there may be a little bit of shifting. I mean, not big shifting. It's not going to go in a pole shift, and I don't think we're going to have any earthquake activity. Hopefully. If it goes well, if we're not attacked in the middle of it, if they don't come up with something else. Yes. Look, 1 minute. Okay. They're called the Ruby Order. Okay, we have Emerald Order, which are guardian, like the Guardian groups. We have Emerald Order, Amethyst Order, and Gold Order. And we'll get into what that means. That literally comes down from which light fields, primary light fields that the Guardian groups create. The Ruby Order is not one of the original orders of this matrix. It's one of the fallen orders that came back up and are trying to help their own out. But right now it is divided about 40-60. I just said to me about 40-60. Unfortunately, not in our favor. I didn't know that this was filled in. Thank you. So anyway, that's not a great way, brother. Now, okay, yes.
Since they developed magnetometers, the Earth's magnetic field has been going down. The natural magnetic field here is going down all the time. Does that have any effect on this whole business?
Yeah, it's all interconnected. In fact, if they get their way, the magnetic fields will completely collapse, as we went through 2012. If we can get the grids restored, it will sustain almost. Actually, when you go through a stellar activation cycle, you will have a collapse of magnetic grids temporarily because they turn electrical. However, there are ways to buffer that, and the human beings on the planet were part of that way. We were transducers of frequency that were supposed to hold enough of the magnetism so the magnetic grids didn't completely collapse. If they have their way, and this is why the Anunnaki teachings teach you that, when the big event comes, when the great cleansing is doing its thing, you are going to have a collapse of the magnetic grids. They'll tell you this. It's also doing things to the natural pulsation of Earth. I forget what they call that ratio, but it's like 7 points.
Schumann resonance.
It is Schumann resonance. If that is completely unnatural resonance for this planet, that will change. All of this won't change overnight, I hope. I mean, it would be a little dramatic if it did. But We've been assured that, I know one thing, if there were any major issues that we had to be aware of with these changes happening, either from what they're doing or from what, the work that we need to do to make sure they don't flatten everything here, we would be made aware in detail of what it was and what to do about it. That much, They wouldn't be telling us this much already if they were holding punches, and I know that.
Where does the main energy